Chapter 1231. On the way to the Starry Sky Fortress, Jun Changshao tried his best to play the role of a full-time father. Not only was he in charge of the two children's daily lives, he was also teaching them how to behave. It's over. The system said, even disciples who have already formed their values can be led astray by the host. These two children who have just gained intelligence will probably be led astray. Xiaohua, Xiaoxia. One day, Jun Changshao called the two little fellows over and said with a deep tone, "Remember, in a world where martial arts are respected, you cannot do bad things, and you cannot be bullied by others." After all, they were in human form, so Gosheng gave the two spirits names. One was Xiaohua, and the other was Xiaoxia. Understood, father. Xiaohua and Xiaoxia nodded heavily. Jun Changshao patted the two little heads, and said, "Go and play with your big brother Yuhen." N. Xiaohua and Xiaoxia ran out. Not long after, Shang Yohan's screams came from the deck as he was thrown around by the two spirits like a ball. Seeing his sons playing so happily, Jun Changshao's face revealed a fatherly smile. However, soon, he became worried. He still had to manage a sect, and he couldn't be a full-time father. How was he going to raise them? Father. At this moment, Huoling ran over and yawned, "I'm tired from playing, I want to sleep." "You have to ask me even if I want to sleep." Jun Changshao collapsed, "Then go to sleep." Swish! Suddenly, the fire spirit turned into a ray of red light and instantly merged into his body, turning into a fingernail-sized lotus flower and stored in the dantian. Jun Changshao was stunned. So this little thing could still return to his body. "Father." Evil spirit ran over, rubbing his eyes that were about to close, and said, "I'm tired too, I want to sleep too." Swish! After saying that, it merged into Jun Changshao's dantian, taking the form of a petal and stored near the fire spirit. After the two spirits entered, Gosheng instantly obtained two types of strongest attributes. First, he raised his right hand, and flames that could purify everything in the world appeared. Then, he raised his left hand, and evil qi that could corrode everything in the world appeared. Awesome! Ha ha ha! Jun Changshao laughed heartily as the troubles of the past few days were swept away. The system sighed. First, there were husband and wife fighting together, then there were brothers who abused their handsomeness, and now there are father and son soldiers going into battle. Jun Changshao was very worried that he would suddenly have two children of spiritual bodies. In the end, they could once again fuse into his dantian and even provide him with two powerful attributes. He immediately felt that his life was incomparably wonderful. His right hand was fire. His left hand was evil. Who in this world can compete with me for glory? Ha ha ha. Jun Changshao raised his head and laughed again. Don't blame him for being smug. In the mortal universe, it was already very rare for a martial artist to grasp one type of spirit body. Gosheng had grasped two types of spirit bodies. This was absolutely unprecedented. This was especially true for the evil spirits that had been purified by the fire spirit. Not only would they not suffer any backlash, but they could also freely control them and use them on the right path. Just like weapons, attributes did not differentiate between good and evil, because it depended on the user. I feel very strong now. I can't wait to go to the Starry Sky Fortress and wreak havoc. Jun Changshao clenched his fists tightly, his eyes burning with passion. With the two children of spiritual bodies in his dantian, he exploded with unprecedented confidence. Host, you should take a look at the Patriarch's exclusive Divine Weapon Modification Stone and Experience Talisman first. The system reminded him. Jun Changshao said, I almost forgot about the reward. Wait. The excess contribution points. Jun Changshao hurriedly opened the system data panel and found that the value on it was exactly 100,000. He immediately held his head and shouted, my 18,990 contribution points. Because of the appearance of the fire spirit and evil spirit, Gosheng had neglected the side mission reward, so he had already deducted the excess contribution points. Host, just treat it as spending 20,000 to buy two types of spirit bodies. The system comforted him. Jun Changshao endured the pain and fused them into his space ring. He took out the experience talisman and crushed it one by one. Paw! 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 After crushing the 20th talisman, a system notification sounded in his ears. Ding! Host has reached the upper limit of Wuxing's great perfection. Requirement met, epic mission activated. Ding! Host has reached the upper limit of Wuxing's great perfection. Requirement met, epic mission activated. Jun Changshao sat down, his face expressionless. It's here. The epic mission had finally arrived. As long as he completed it, he would be able to break through to Martial Emperor. Although Jun Changshao already knew that Martial Emperor was only a lower level in the void-piercing realm, in the falling star continent, it was undoubtedly the most supreme existence. As long as I take this step. He clenched his fists and finally became excited, saying, this seat will be equivalent to ascending to the throne, and will be on equal footing with the 9 great martial emperors. Just you wait. Jun Changshao roared, I will definitely take revenge. Revenge my ass. The system said, you have no enmity with him. Sorry. Jun Changshao said, I took the wrong script. Under normal circumstances, as the strongest super-existences in the plane, the protagonist would inevitably have conflicts with them on his path of growth. Perhaps there would be a classic line like, this child cannot be left alive. However, the little death-courting expert had been wandering around the falling star continent for so long, but the 9 great martial emperors had never appeared. Even when Go Sheng was about to reach the peak of the plane's martial arts, he still maintained the sense of mystery that an expert must have. 9 brothers. Stop hiding. If you don't come out, you will become a background wall. Swish. Jun Changshao clicked on the first epic mission. The content was Epic Mission 13, Mission Details. Within 3 years, the host is requested to promote the sect of all times to a first-class sect and obtain the recognition of all the major sects and even the top powerhouses in the falling star continent. Mission failure, not completed within the specified time or not recognized by all parties. Mission reward? It's that simple. Jun Changshao's face was stunned. With the current strength of the sect of all times, with Yi Tianqing's approval, it would definitely be a first-class sect. If he had to say that it was a little troublesome, it was probably that the total number of disciples did not meet the requirement. However, if he gave himself 3 years, he would definitely be able to recruit them. A free point. You still need to obtain the recognition of all the sects, the system reminded him. Jun Changshao said, when the sect is promoted to first class, invite all the reputable sect leaders here. I want to see who agrees and who disagrees. The system was speechless. Judging from the host's compromise to marry the Rose Queen in order to complete the side mission, it was not surprising that he would threaten all the big shots. There are also top powerhouses. The system said, strictly speaking, I'm afraid they are referring to the 9 great martial emperors. They are elusive. If the host does not obtain their recognition, I'm afraid it will be difficult to complete the epic mission. Jun Changshao roared, can you not dampen my enthusiasm? I'm telling the host to recognize reality and not underestimate the epic mission, the system said. Jun Changshao fell silent. Whether it was the number of disciples or the recognition of all the sects, it was a small matter. However, the mission stated that it required top powerhouses. This was a little tricky. After all, no one in the falling star continent knew where the 9 great martial emperors were. Sigh. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, this is not a free point. He clicked on another epic mission. Epic Mission 14, Mission Details. The 9 great martial emperors of the falling star continent are imprisoned in the 9 levels of hell. Host, please rescue all of them. Mission reward? Fuck. Jun Changshao jumped up and said in shock, the 9 great martial emperors are imprisoned in the 9 levels of prison? The system wanted to find a corner and cry. It took advantage of the moment when the host was feeling proud to give him a timely blow. It was quite happy, but it was immediately slapped in the face by the epic mission 14. Did it have to be so fast? Chapter 1232. After seeing Shi, Jun Changshao was overjoyed. He was just worrying about the whereabouts of the 9 great martial emperors, and the quest gave him a big spoiler. However, Jun Changshao calmed down and thought, why are the 9 great martial emperors locked in the 9 levels of hell? Did they break the rules set by the Universal Fortress? There are. He asked, what did your ancestor do to be locked in? Shang Yuhen thought for a while and said, I heard from my father that my ancestor forcefully raised his cultivation to the middle void-piercing realm, and was ruled by the Universal Fortress to be against the rules, so he was locked up. Forcefully raised his cultivation. Jun Changshao said, that sounds awesome. Shang Yuhen said, father said that this method is very extreme, either succeed or die trying, so my ancestor thought for a long time before deciding to take the risk, but he was discovered by the Universal Fortress. After understanding the reason why Shang's ancestor was locked up, Jun Changshao thought, could it be that the 9 great martial emperors also did something similar and were locked in the 9 levels of hell? There's no point in thinking so much. The system said, once we find the culprit, we'll know everything. That's true. Jun Changshao put aside his thoughts and shrugged, I originally planned to go and investigate, but now that there's an epic quest, I have to go in no matter what. Let's do the math. The system said, Shi and Shi are involved. Jun Changshao said seriously, so even if the 9 levels of hell are a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, I have to go in and investigate. Shwa! He waved his hand and grabbed a crystal-clear stone. This was the reward of the side quest, the Patriarch's exclusive divine weapon modification stone. The previous rewards were all used to modify disciples, but today I finally got a tool that can modify my divine weapon. Jun Changshao said emotionally. Here came the problem. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others' divine weapon modifications were all handled by Master Fan, and now that Go Sheng was in the endless universe, what should he do? Do it yourself, and you'll have ample food and clothing. Jun Changshao raised his right palm and a scorching flame immediately appeared. Although the spirit of the fire soul was sleeping in his dantian, he could still freely control this kind of flame that was born in the mortal universe. Furthermore, it was much stronger than the sacred flame body. Using it to refine any ore would be extremely easy. Hoo-hoo! After 2 hours of smelting, the modification stone gradually turned into liquid. Shwa! Jun Changshao waved his hand and retrieved the finger of Empire. He thought to himself, sinful selves and constellations' exclusive divine weapons have been changed to normal. I hope that my divine weapon won't be a joke. ZZZ. As he spoke, the modification stone turned into a solution and poured into the divine weapon. Then, white smoke billowed. A short while later, the liquid completely solidified. The finger of mountains and rivers seemed to be covered with a layer of hard armor. Paw! After a while, the hard outer skin cracked and fell off on a large scale. Whoosh! Whoosh! 7 colored rays of light shot out from within. When the outer skin fell off and the light gradually weakened, a large brush with complicated patterns was suspended in the air, exuding an elegant aura. Jun Changshao held his head and broke down, why did it change into a brush? Do you want me to use this to write calligraphy? Whoosh! At this moment, a stream of light suddenly flew out from the brush and entered between his eyebrows to instill memories. So that's how it is. After Jun Changshao flipped through the obtained memories, there was a flash of understanding in his eyes. Then, with a wave of one hand, he grabbed the brush and started to write in the void. Whoosh! 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 With a lift and a pause, the brush moved like a dragon. Shwa! 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 Jun Changshao used a mysterious footwork to fly up. The brush seemed to be alive as it continued to write in the void. It could be said that the brush was as strong as wind and thunder, and it was as if it was made of iron. Ta! After a while, it dissipated and fell to the ground. The camera cut to the left of Jun Changshao and saw a few sonorous and powerful words appear in the void. It was "I'm the most handsome in the universe." Pooey. The system mimicked spitting. Jun Changshao placed the brush behind him like a calligraphy master and said indifferently, "Explode." Bang! 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 The 5 words engraved in the space suddenly exploded. Because he was inside the space ring and had deliberately suppressed most of the power, the scene that appeared was not very explosive. Not bad, not bad. A smile appeared on Jun Changxiao's face. This kind of exclusive divine armament that gathered a strong explosive force was much more reliable than the previous one that was full of injuries. Moreover, there was still a new killing move that had not been used. From today onwards, Jun Changshao said, "This exclusive divine armament of mine is called Ji. Pen. Jiang. Mountain." The system broke down and said, "What's the difference between this and Jiang Shan? The host really doesn't have any talent in naming. Author, take after me." The Patriarch's exclusive divine armament had been successfully remodeled, and the former Jiang Shan and Jiang Shan had become a thing of the past. Jun Changshao needed actual combat to know how strong Jiang Shan was. However, from the test just now, he could roughly deduce that it should be much stronger than stabbing the butt. More importantly, he no longer had to bear the charge of being wretched. He had changed to a refined fighting style, which would definitely give the readers a new good impression of him. Starry Sky Fortress. Standing at the bow of the ship, Jun Changshao proudly said, "This sovereign's fire and evil twin spirits, as well as the remodeled divine armament, all need you to measure their power." Just as Gosheng was trying to act cool, the ancient warship suddenly came to a sudden stop. His entire body crashed into the light barrier that separated them from the outside world with a bang, and his face slid down the barrier. "Sigh," the system said, receiving the host's face attack head-on. "The defensive barrier has been exhausted." Patriarch Shang Yuhen covered his face and ran out of the lounge, saying, "What's going on?" Jun Changshao awkwardly stood up, the left side of his face had been slashed red, and then angrily looked into the distance. In the universe's starry sky, a starry sky warship was quietly floating. From the trajectory that it had yet to dissipate, it was obvious that it had suddenly made a big turn and blocked his path. Son of a bitch. Jun Changshao covered his face and cursed, "If you don't follow the rules, your loved ones will cry. Don't you understand this principle?" Ta! On the warship, a middle-aged man with a stubble walked out, wearing heavy leather boots and short-sleeved leather armor. Shwa! His white cloak fluttered, and there was a rustling sound. He raised his muscular arms and hugged them together, saying with a black face, "Brat, who are you scolding?" This person's body was very strong, and he emitted a powerful aura. Especially the clothes he was wearing, it was like an admiral of the Navy headquarters. Jun Changshao immediately became serious. At this moment, he had already used his spiritual sense to capture the word Starry Sky Fortress written on the cloak. Patriarch Shang Yuhen transmitted, "This is one of the 12 patrolmen of the Starry Sky Fortress." Chapter 1233. As an organization, the Universal Fortress had a detailed division of duties. Guanzhou and the old man who went to the falling star continent were scouts, responsible for gathering information. As for the general who was killed by Jun Changshao, his position was relatively higher, but he was only used as a vanguard. There was a very important position in the fortress, the 12 patrol envoys. Not only were they patrolling the mortal universe, but they were also in charge of capturing criminals when necessary. There were 12 patrol envoys, and they liked to be alone. Especially with their strange clothes, they were easily recognized. Shang Yuhen had not only heard of this position, but he also knew that his ancestor was captured by 2 patrol envoys. "Are they very strong?" Jun Changshao asked. Shang Yuhen said with a serious expression, "I heard that only those who have reached the middle level of the void-piercing realm are qualified to become patrol envoys." Damn! Jun Changshao opened his eyes wide. Reaching the middle level in the mortal universe was equivalent to having the qualifications to ascend to the higher realm. This kind of big shot was actually willing to be a patrol guard. The sandbag is here. The system said, "Host, you can play to your heart's content." Jun Changxiao's mouth twitched. The Dark Demon King was also at the middle level. If not for the Heaven Origin Soul suppressing pagoda, he definitely would not have been able to defeat him. Now that he was facing a powerful patrol guard, he felt a little guilty. Furthermore, there were 11 of such level. There is something in the Universal Fortress. Jun Changshao said to himself, I really have to be careful. Because of the fire and evil twin spirits and the modified god weapon, after seeing a patrol guard of the Universal Fortress, he immediately restrained himself. Develop wretchedly, don't be reckless. Friend. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, suddenly stopping a car in the middle of the road, it is easy to cause an accident. His tone was relatively more polite. This was not because he was afraid, but because he wanted to preserve his strength and wait until they reached the Universal Fortress before causing a ruckus. The middle-aged man did not care about being scolded. Instead, he said indifferently, Kid, you know that an accident will happen, so you should slow down before entering the Universal Fortress. So it was not because he was looking for trouble, but because Go Sheng was traveling too fast, so he suddenly stopped him. Have we reached the Starry Sky Fortress? Jun Changshao was startled. He then took out the star map and confirmed his coordinates. He apologized, I was driving too fast and didn't pay attention. He really didn't know that they were already within range of their destination. However, taking out the map and his subsequent expression were all an act. He pretended that he had been careless. The patrol envoy said faintly, remember, fast ships are prohibited in the area under the jurisdiction of the Starry Sky Fortress. If you do it again, you will be punished. Okay, Jun Changshao said. The system said, this is the first time I've seen the host cower. You know nothing. Jun Changshao cursed in his heart, I'm just enduring the humiliation and sneaking into the Starry Sky Fortress first. If it was just an ordinary organization, it wouldn't be a problem for them to kill their way in. However, the Starry Sky Fortress was not an ordinary organization. If they were to clash head-on with that guy, it might lead to a series of subsequent problems. Furthermore, based on the current situation, the other party did not seem to know that he was the one who had taken care of the two tyrants of Starry Sky. Otherwise, they would have already started fighting. This was an extremely good opportunity. Before they confirmed his identity, he could investigate the overall strength of the Starry Sky Fortress and then rescue the 9 great martial emperors. If the conditions allowed, he could release all the prisoners of the 9 levels of hell and make them busy. Jun Changshao didn't cower. He just wanted to make the most perfect plan in the shortest time possible. The patrol envoy drove the warship to open a path and said faintly, go ahead. Thank you. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and drove the ancient warship to fly over. Only when he was far away from the other party did he sigh helplessly. He really wanted to fight with a middle-level void-piercing realm cultivator to test his current battle strength. However, since he had reached the territory of the Starry Sky Fortress, to avoid any mistakes, he could only forcefully suppress this thought. It's still more important to investigate and save people. Jun Changshao, who was standing on the bow of the ship, suddenly lost his shameless temperament. That's right, the way you opened the reading software was correct. Go Sheng now gave people an unprecedented sense of steadiness. It was a complete change in style. The system said, this is a patriarch who cares about the big picture. Stop the ship. Suddenly, a shout came from behind him. The patrol envoy drove the warship and chased after him. Jun Changshao stopped and said with a puzzled expression, I don't think I exceeded the speed limit. Kid. The patrol envoy said in a low voice, since you have the Starry Sky map, it means that you are a second-class resident of the Starry Sky Fortress. I need to check your identity. The Starry Sky map that Jun Changshao took out just now wasn't the one that was widely circulated. It was a special version of the Starry Sky Fortress. Not only did it have the coordinates of most planes, as long as one's spiritual sense was integrated into it, they would be able to locate themselves. It was a high-tech product of the martial arts world. It's broken. Jun Changshao thought to himself, I forgot about this. The Starry Sky map was obtained from the 5 tyrants of the Starry Sky. At that time, he even heard the white-haired old man say that only second-class residents could have it. However, because he was in a hurry to pretend to be confused, he didn't think of it. Even 100 secrets can be overlooked. Take it out, the patrol envoy shouted again. He, who had been patrolling outside all year round, had seen many martial artists who tried to sneak into the fortress with fake Starry Sky maps. Moreover, there was a rule on it that once the item was found, it would be confiscated and the person would be arrested. Jun Changshao furrowed his brows slightly. The tense and exciting background music started to play, and the atmosphere became tense. All right. Jun Changshao shrugged and waved his hand, throwing out an item. Paw! The patrol envoy raised his hand and caught it. It was a token with the word second-class identity engraved on it. There were strange patterns around it, and the workmanship was very exquisite. Shang Yuhen was surprised and thought to himself, so the patriarch is a second-class resident of the fortress. The Starry Sky Fortress would recruit residents every year at a fixed time. The conditions were not only money, but also manpower. Both were indispensable. Therefore, it was very difficult to become a third-class resident, let alone a second-class resident. The 5 tyrants of the Starry Sky first spent a lot of resources to become third-class residents. Then, they used their connections to get in through the back door to become second-class residents. The whole process could be written in a book. Jun Changshao had neglected the Starry Sky map's special version. Naturally, he wouldn't neglect his identity. Therefore, when he came, he borrowed the tyrant's resident token. He wasn't borrowing, he was openly robbing. He even forced the white-haired old man to forcefully remove the soul imprint. He was so bad that he had ulcers on his head and pus on his feet. After confirming the authenticity of the token, the patrolling envoy threw it over and said lightly, "Since you are a fortress resident, you should remember the rules. If I catch you speeding next time, you will be punished severely. Because I had to return to the fortress, I forgot the rules. I won't do it again." Jun Changshao smiled and said. After he left, the smile on his face disappeared. His eyes flashed with a strong anger. Damn it! When have I ever been treated like this? If it wasn't for the big picture, I would have fought with him to the end. The system said, "What's the difference between the host and those minor villains if you talk tough after the event?" As someone who suffered from a terminal illness, it could be said that its power was increasing day by day. It didn't give the readers who liked to complain a bit of a chance. I will leave for Beijing tomorrow and will be back in 3 to 5 days. Female fans in Beijing, I am coming. Chapter 1234. It was rare that Jun Changshao cared about the big picture and didn't arrogantly clash with the patrolman. This was the right thing to do, because while traveling at a low speed, he saw many ships coming from different directions. It seemed like they were going to the interstellar fortress as well. Good thing I managed to hold myself back. Jun Changshao thought, if I fought with that guy, it would definitely alert a lot of people, then the fortress would be alerted and I wouldn't be able to sneak in. Still not strong enough. I'm still not strong enough. Go Sheng was very annoyed. The system said, "It hasn't even been 10 years since the host transmigrated, and you've already broken through to Martial Emperor from the lowest level, what else is there to be dissatisfied with?" Jun Changshao calmed down and thought about it, then said, "That's true." If this was heard by the old monsters who only barely touched the threshold of Wusheng after thousands of years, they would definitely rush up and slap him. On the road, there were more and more ships coming from different directions. It was like they were going to a market. Jun Changshao kept his spiritual sight on. He quickly noticed that the warriors on each ship were wearing different clothes, there were even some that looked like humans and beasts. The interstellar fortresses and 9 layers of hell was terrifying. But the underground black market was also the holy land that all the warriors of this world yearned for. So it attracted many people at every moment, hoping to find some treasures. Although there were quite a few ships, everyone knew the rules and didn't try to overtake them. After all, this was under the fortress's jurisdiction. Unless they ate a bear's heart or leopard's guts, no one would dare to violate the rules. Strange. Jun Changshao looked around, then said, "Why do so many people need to disguise themselves?" There were quite a few warriors on the ships at the front, about half of them were in disguise, but because their methods were inferior, they were immediately seen through. Patriarch Shang Yuhan explained, "The fortress's underground black market sells large amounts of weapons and equipment. Some worlds will send warriors here to buy them, so they need to disguise themselves to avoid being discovered by their enemies." "So that means," Jun Changshao said, "this is also an underground armory." Tsk tisk. Rubbing his chin, he said, "To expand their business to the entire mortal universe, the interstellar fortress has quite the business mind." He was envious. If he could expand his business to the mortal universe and earn money from the various major planes, it would definitely be super awesome. Currently, his business with second young Master Tang had spread all over the falling star continent. However, he was only making money for himself. When would he be able to earn foreign exchange? Jun Changshao didn't know much about business, so he didn't think too much about it. Instead, he thought that since he had a conflict with the Starry Sky Fortress, why not change his identity first? Just do what you want to do. Go Sheng returned to his cabin and put on an exquisite face-changing mask. Then, he put on a brand new blue robe, fastened his belt, and tied his headscarf. He gently opened his paper fan and instantly transformed into a graceful scholar. Ah! Standing at the bow of the ship, Go Sheng looked at the area of meteorites in the distance and recited aloud, "Flying down 3,000 feet, I suspect it's the Milky Way falling from the ninth heaven." The system was speechless. How elegant! Where is the Starry Sky Fortress? Jun Changshao did not look at the map, because as long as he followed the warship in front, he would be able to find it. True enough. After traveling for about half a day, it was like the end of the endless darkness, gradually showing the shape of a building. As they got closer, it was like a huge castle standing in the void. Patriarch Shang Yuhen transmitted his voice, "This is the Starry Sky Fortress. It doesn't seem to be as big as the Heavenly Mandate Royal City." The scene changed, and Jun Changshao took back what he just said. Because when they were only 100 feet away from the fortress, he and the warship were like ants in front of it. Oh my god! Shang Yuhen was shocked. This is too big. The Starry Sky Fortress was really big. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a small plane. In particular, the surface of the castle was plated with a layer of black metal ore, which looked very sturdy and durable. It would be very interesting if it exploded inside, Jun Changshao thought to himself. The system was speechless. The host's thinking is getting more and more dangerous and extreme. There was an entrance similar to the city gate in the west of the Starry Sky Fortress, but it was now closed. Many warships were docked nearby, carrying warriors who seemed to be anxiously waiting for it to open. It was just an ordinary entrance. Warriors who came to the underground black market to purchase goods had to enter through this entrance. There was also a city gate in the south, north, and east, respectively, for third-class, second-class, and first-class warriors to enter. Jun Changshao could have entered from the north gate, but after all, the main purpose of this trip was to the underground black market, so he steered the warship and waited at the west gate. Eldest brother. On the ship next to him, a man said solemnly, "This time, we came to the Starry Sky Fortress on the orders of the Patriarch. We must buy the goods that the clan needs." Yes. The eldest brother nodded seriously. On the warships docked nearby, warriors from various planes were also fighting to discuss. Jun Changshao lay on the seat and closed his eyes to rest. He also hoped to buy the herbs to refine the half-step wuxing elixir in the underground black market, and then mass-produce it for the disciples. Of course. He still had to enter the 9 levels of hell and find the 9 super tragedies. Just from the outside, the Starry Sky Fortress is no different from an iron fortress. The prison system used to imprison prisoners must be even stronger. How am I supposed to sneak in? Jun Changshao thought to himself. At first, he wanted to let Cui Hua bite through it, but that would easily alert the Starry Sky Fortress, making it very difficult for him to sneak in. Getting in is actually very simple. The system said, as long as the host commits a crime in the Starry Sky Fortress, won't it be fine? It's not impossible to sneak in as a prisoner. Jun Changshao thought to himself, but first, I have to buy the herbs to refine the elixir and have a comprehensive understanding of the Starry Sky Fortress. Creak. While he was thinking, the tightly shut west gate suddenly opened. Dozens of armored soldiers walked out, and the leading general said in a clear voice, "To enter the Starry Sky Fortress, you must pay the required 10,000 spirit stones." Damn! Jun Changshao cursed in his mind, you need to pay to enter the fortress, how immoral. The system, this guy seemed to have forgotten the scene of martial artists from the Starry Sky continent entering the Starry Sky Fortress and shamelessly asking for money. What's more, they even sold their school uniforms at a ridiculously high price. It was only right and proper for him to take money, but it was immoral for others to take money. As the host, I shouldn't be called Go Sheng, but Go Biao. The dozens of soldiers standing at the entrance, just from their auras alone, were not inferior to Wu Sheng at the consummate level, especially the leading general, who was also at the lower level of the void-piercing realm. If even the gatekeepers were so powerful, the Starry Sky Fortress was too strong. Sigh. Jun Changshao put the warship into his spatial ring, then landed at the city gate and paid the 10,000 spirit stones according to the order of the crowd. However, before he walked in, he looked back and saw that there were at least 10,000 people in the queue. He immediately said enviously, if my Starry Sky continent also had an underground black market of such a scale, just the entrance fee alone would be the rhythm of making money. Idiot! Seeing that he had suddenly stopped, the 5 burly men who were following behind him said grumpily, hurry up and fucking leave. Who are you calling an idiot? The idiot is calling you an idiot. Alright then. The burly man was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He was about to raise his fist and punch when he saw the soldiers on both sides staring at him, so he suppressed his anger and glared at Jun Changshao who was walking in front. Despicable fellow! I will remember you in my heart. Jun Changshao, who was walking in front, thought to himself, so there are people with bad tempers in this kind of place. Once I buy the materials, won't I be able to enter with a little trick? All the major figures would pale at the mention of the 9 levels prison, but Go Sheng wanted to cause trouble and enter. He was really a despicable person. The tunnel in front of the Starry Sky Fortress was very long, which meant that the exterior defense was very strong, and it would be very difficult to attack. Ta! After walking for about 100 steps, Jun Changshao stood inside the brightly lit fortress. After traveling in the dark universe for so long, he hadn't seen light for a long time, although the color seemed to be man-made. Wow! Shang Yuhen exclaimed. At this moment, the two of them were standing on the street at the entrance of the city. Rows upon rows of magnificent and huge buildings appeared in their vision. The most flashy thing was that there was a light barrier that could be seen with the naked eye, which transformed into the blue sky and white clouds. Buzz! Buzz! An ancient bell rang from afar, which added a bit of solemnity to this castle-like city. On the wide and huge streets, there was an endless stream of humans and beasts wearing all kinds of clothes. They were all living in harmony, and it was simply a peaceful time. Jun Changshao had experienced many storms before. He might be surprised at the magnificence of the Starry Sky Fortress, but his face remained indifferent and maintained the steadiness that he had after a huge change. Perhaps it was because he acted like a coward in front of the patrol envoy, which made him start to treat everything with the identity of a patriarch. It was just unknown how long he could maintain it. The Starry Sky Fortress had the same layout as the city gate, which had 4 divisions. The North City was the worst and the East City was the best. Patriarch. On the way to find an inn, Shang Yuhen didn't understand and asked, "You have a second-class identity, why don't you go to the second-class district?" Low profile. Jun Changshao said, "This is my usual style." "I see." Shang Yuhen was so impressed that he wanted to prostrate himself. He obviously had a superior identity, but he wanted to stay in the lowest level district. This kind of transcendence made Shang Yuhen so impressed that he wanted to prostrate himself. "Patriarch, you have no identity in the North City. I heard that just the cost of staying in an inn is very expensive." "It doesn't matter." Jun Changshao didn't care at all. He then found a decent inn and came to the counter and said, "Shopkeeper, give me 2 of the best rooms." The chubby shopkeeper looked at the 2 of them and said indifferently, "One of the best rooms will cost 50,000 low-grade spirit stones." After running an inn for so many years, he could immediately tell what kind of person and what brand they were wearing. Therefore, his attitude would change accordingly. 50,000? Jun Changshao blurted out, "So expensive, you are robbing me." Even a super luxurious presidential suite would only cost about 1,000 taels of silver in the Falling Star continent. Here, it actually cost 50,000 spirit stones. Although it was the lowest level, even if the guest room and bathroom were made of pure gold, it shouldn't be so expensive. Jun Changshao's voice was relatively loud, which alarmed the martial artists who came in one after another. They all looked at him with disdain. Who didn't have enough money in their pockets when they came to the Starry Sky Fortress? There was actually someone who complained that the room was expensive. The next second, all the martial artists retracted their disdainful looks. Because Shang Yuhen casually put a lot of high-grade spirit stones on the counter and asked indifferently, "Is it enough?" "Master." The shopkeeper hurriedly smiled and said, "Please go upstairs, please go upstairs." Just as he was about to take the money, Jun Changshao stopped him and said, "I still like your arrogant look just now." "Me." He took back half of the high-grade spirit stones and said, "I only want 1 room now." This was obviously a scam. Instead of giving him 50,000 spirit stones, he might as well squeeze in with the disciples. Creak. The door of the superior room was pushed open. After Shang Yuhen came in, he exclaimed, "Oh my god, this is too luxurious." Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. He was wrong. The superior room wasn't made of pure gold. It was made of even rarer ores. Even the floor under his feet was priceless. Inhumane. No wonder it was so expensive. But, Shang Yuhen walked into the bedroom and frowned, "It's just that the bed is a bit small. There is a mark." Jun Changshao said seriously, "I know you are rich, but when you are outside, you must be thrifty. You must not spend extravagantly." "Yes," Shang Yuhen said. Jun Changshao patted his shoulder and ordered, "You sleep on the chair, I will sleep on the bed." "Ah." Shang Yuhen was depressed. As for the spirit stones that he took out, they had already landed in Jun Changshao's pocket. He was definitely not cheating his disciple of his money. He was just keeping it safe for him. He would return it when he got rid of his bad habit of spending. The fact that the sect leader had gone to this extent was truly touching. Jun Changshao and Shang Yuhen were temporarily staying in the inn. However, when they went down to eat, they met the grumpy old man again. Jun Changshao found a seat and was about to sit down. The other party was like a mountain in front of him. His face was fierce. "Excuse me. Are you blind? Don't you know how to go around?" Jun Changshao was silent. He went around from the side. This brat is so bad. When he came to book the room, he thought it was expensive. I can tell he is a poor and weak rookie. Why would he come here? The diners in the dining hall on the first floor were all discussing in low voices. They looked at Jun Changshao with disdain. It was undeniable that the Starry Sky Fortress forbade fighting in the city. However, as a man, he did not even have the courage to speak back when someone deliberately provoked him. This was too bad. Shang Yuhen, who had just sat down, could not stand it anymore. He stood up and was about to argue with the grumpy old man. However, he was stopped by Jun Changshao, who was pouring tea. Remember, the Sect of all times' first motto is to keep a low profile when you are outside. What? The grumpy old man glared at him. You don't agree? Shang Yuhen clenched his fists but still sat down. Jun Changshao took a sip of tea. He released his spiritual senses and quickly found the way to the underground black market. After eating, he said, "Come, let's go out for a walk." Brat! The grumpy old man, who was sitting far away, deliberately took a step forward and said coldly, "Watch where you are going. Don't bump into me." His meaning was obvious. He wanted Go Sheng to go around. Many people looked over with interest. This was the second time someone provoked him. Anyone with a bit of courage would not be able to hold it in. However, they were greatly disappointed because Jun Changshao led Shang Yuhen around the corner and walked out of the inn. Too cowardly. There is no one else who can cultivate martial arts to this extent. The grumpy old man retracted his foot proudly and shouted at the door. Brat, remember, next time you see me, you have to take a detour. Damn it. Shang Yuhen was about to explode. Jun Changshao comforted him. Don't lower yourself to the same level as trash. The system was confused. Is this still the host? His personality has changed greatly. 2 in 1. Chapter 1235. Under normal circumstances, the underground black market was not allowed to exist in the open. It could only exist in the dark. However, the black market of the Starry Sky Fortress was really underground. The scale was not small. Jun Changshao walked down the tunnel and strolled for a while in a black market that resembled a shopping mall. He almost got lost. Patriarch. Shang Yuhen asked, "What are we doing?" He wanted to come to the Starry Sky Fortress at first, but the Dark Demon King was destroyed by the Patriarch, so there was no need for him. Of course. It was not that he had forgotten about his ancestors. It was that there was no need to spend a lot of money to get him out of the 9 levels of hell. After all, he would be locked up again. Buying herbs. Jun Changshao said. Because there were many precious treasures in the black market, there were many restrictions to prevent others from peeping, so he could only search step by step. Hard work paid off. After wandering around for half an hour, he finally arrived at the area that mainly sold treasures. There were all kinds of herbs in the shops. Little friend. A herb shopkeeper smiled and said, "What herbs do you need?" The underground black market was opened by the Starry Sky Fortress, but the shops inside were contracted by other planes. Therefore, it was not as snobbish as the shopkeeper of the inn who always adhered to the principle that the customer was God. Jun Changshao looked carefully and found that there was nothing he needed. Therefore, he wrote down the list of herbs and pictures and handed it over, saying, "Do you have these?" "Yes, but," the shopkeeper said, "there is not much stock." Jun Changshao did not think much of it and said, "Take out as much as you have, I want them all." This tone made the shopkeeper realize that he had met a big customer. Therefore, he hurriedly walked out from the counter and bowed, saying, "Little friend, please wait in the VIP lounge." Okay. Jun Changshao brought Shang Yuhen over. Just as they sat down, 2 beautiful ladies came forward to pour tea. They had a customer first smile on their faces. Go Sheng was not interested in women. As the prince of the great Shang Empire, Shang Yuhen naturally did not care. After drinking tea for half an hour, a middle-aged man with a decent appearance came over with the shopkeeper. He cupped his hands and said, "I am the manager of Hongyun Medicinal Hall. May I know your name, young friend?" Handsome June, the corner of the medicine deacon's mouth twitched. Good name. Good name. Are the herbs ready? Jun Changshao had done business with the AI family in the past, so he had plenty of experience. Thus, he didn't like to waste time and hoped to complete the transaction as soon as possible so that he could move on to the next one. It wasn't easy for him to find a place that sold the ingredients for refining the half-sage pill. If he could afford it, he would buy them all. He wouldn't leave a single one for anyone else. The system said, The height of this economic condition depends on the depth of the 9 spirit stone pits in the Shang dynasty's treasury. Will you die if you don't complain? Yes. Right away. The deacon was also an experienced businessman and he could tell that this customer was in a hurry. Hence, he said, your humble servant has already instructed my subordinates to arrange the herbs that young Master Jun needs and they will be sent over very soon. Yes. Jun Changshao nodded. The deacon took the opportunity to take the initiative to talk and even indirectly asked where Gou Sheng came from. The list of materials he took out were all high-grade goods and he asked for all of them. This was definitely a rich customer. If it happened to be close to his own plane, it would be convenient for him to do business in the future. I'm from the Valoran continent, Jun Changshao said. Gou Sheng wasn't someone who would casually sell his home address. He wasn't worried about being sent blades, but, if he caused a ruckus in the fortress, wouldn't it be the same as tricking the Starfall continent? Valoran continent? From the deacon's confused eyes, it was obvious that he had never heard of this plane. Jun Changshao said, my plane is made up of Dalmatia, Naxos, and other countries. Every region has a resident hero who is then controlled by a profession called the Summoner. They fight in the Summoner's Canyon. Every year, they also organize a War of the Gods. The winner takes the throne and the loser takes the blame and retires. The system said, you really know how to brag. I see. The deacon was curious, young Master Jun is also a summoner? Jun Changshao said proudly, not only am I a summoner, but I also control 2 natal heroes. One is the Gale Sword hero, the other is the Master of Shadow Stream. These are the 2 most difficult heroes to control. Only I can use them to their fullest potential. People have given me the nickname Shill Rope, Child's Calamity. Since he had nothing to do, Gou Sheng started bragging. The deacon really believed him and asked, young Master Jun, where is the Valoran continent? North of the starry sky, my king is the most beautiful. Didn't north of the starry sky refer to the north of the universe? As for the last sentence, could it be some kind of code? After a wild imagination, the deacon thought to himself, since I know the approximate location, I should be able to find the place. I'll go take a look when I have time. Maybe I can establish trade with the Valoran continent. Time always passed quickly when he was bragging. Jun Changshao didn't even turn around to take out his sword. Once the phantom blade was activated, he couldn't see the amazing maneuvers. After he finished speaking, the herb workers put down the space rings one by one. Young Master Jun. The deacon smiled and said, the herbs you need are all here. As he spoke, he handed over a list and said, the quantity is also written here. Jun Changshao looked at it and suddenly felt a little excited. Elixirs required 50 types of herbs. Not only did this pharmacy have all of them, but they could also make 100 sets. If he met the requirements of the realm, he could make a bunch of half-step wusheng in minutes. Awesome! Jun Changshao suppressed his excitement and said, how much? The deacon said, according to the market price, these high-quality herbs cost 1,200,000 ninth-stage spirit stones. But since young Master Jun wants to buy them all, we'll round it up to 200,000. Jun Changshao said. The deacon almost fell over. Rounding it up to the first digit, 1 million. Okay. Jun Changshao said, it's a deal. The deacon was a little stunned. After signing the contract, holding the space rings full of ninth-stage spirit stones and watching Jun Changshao leave, he slowly came back to his senses and said with emotion, it's the first time I've done such a good business with a customer, 1 million ninth-stage spirit stones in exchange for 100 half-step saint elixirs. The average price was 10,000 per pill. This was acceptable to Jun Changshao. After all, in terms of normal cultivation resources, 10,000 ninth-stage spirit stones might not be enough to cultivate a half-step wusheng. Next, Gou Sheng went to other herb shops and bought all the herbs he needed. A large number of ninth-stage spirit stones flowed away like water. The barrier above was dark. Jun Changshao returned to the inn. After visiting all the herb shops, he had a total of 1,000 sets of half-step saint elixirs. He was in a very good mood. Patriarch Shang Yuhen said, "Why don't you let me pay your money?" Jun Changshao said seriously, "How can I use it? You are my patriarch. You are my family. Please don't treat me as an outsider." Shang Yuhen said. Jun Changshao patted him on the shoulder and said, "I'm very happy that you think so." Speaking of this, his eyes suddenly became cold. Because in front of the inn, the grumpy old man was leaning against the door with a smile on his face. Patriarch Shang Yuhen also noticed and hurriedly said, "This guy must be deliberately blocking the door and not letting us in. Go and have some tea." Jun Changshao pointed to a tea house next to him and his eyes gradually became cold. "No matter what happens outside, don't come out." Patriarch, "I'm not thirsty, go." Shang Yuhen closed his mouth and then obediently walked to the inn, but he was puzzled. Why doesn't Patriarch let me out? Boom! However, just as he walked into the tea house and before he could sit down, there was a sudden explosion outside. A ripple visible to the naked eye instantly spread out and shattered the tea table and teapot around. Shang Yuhen turned his head stiffly and saw the inn through the window. Every inch of his face gradually stiffened after he opened his mouth and his eyeballs slowly protruded from their sockets. Chapter 1236. At the entrance of the inn. Dust was flying everywhere, and spiritual energy was everywhere. Shang Yuhen was shocked and dumbfounded. In his field of vision, the Patriarch had his back to him and was still attacking. The anger and spirit energy that filled his body made him look like a demon that had gone berserk. In an instant, Shang Yuhen realized that the Patriarch had made his move. The spiritual energy ripples just now had shattered all the tea tables and teacups in the tea house. It must be because of this. Whoosh whoosh. A cold wind blew, and the dust was blown away. Shang Yuhen's big eyes were wide open again. The entrance of the inn was in a collapsed state, and the walls inside were full of holes, which even penetrated through many shops and buildings. The end of his spiritual sense was the city wall of the North City. Although it was built very hard, it was already in a sunken state, and the cracks were densely packed like a spider web. Gulp. Shang Yuhen swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said in his heart, "Something happened, something big happened." "What do you mean?" Because the irascible brother, who had provoked the Patriarch many times, was now sunken into the city wall, with a huge hole in his chest. He was half dead. From the situation on the scene and the Patriarch's punch, Shang Yuhen immediately guessed that it was him who did it. If it was in the void of the universe, fighting or killing was not a big problem, but this was the space fortress, and it was forbidden for martial artists to fight in private. Shang Yuhen wanted to rush out. However, the Patriarch's previous warning rang in his ears. "I understand now." The Patriarch had long planned to make his move, which was why he told him not to come out no matter what happened outside. Back to when Shang Yuhen had just entered the tea house, Jun Changshao came to the entrance of the inn. The irascible brother held his hands together and said proudly, "Brat, you seem to have forgotten what I said just now." "What did you say?" Jun Changshao lowered his head and said. There was no emotion in his eyes. If Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and other disciples were here and saw the Patriarch like this, they could instantly guess that it was a sign that he was about to go berserk. "Brother, you are unlucky." Bro Irascible obviously didn't realize it. He said coldly, "As long as you see me, you have to avoid me like a grandson." He pointed to the side and said, "You can go in from the back door now." Because before entering the city, Jun Changshao had stopped for a moment and delayed him for a little while. Thus, Jun Changshao bore a grudge against him. It had to be said that Jun Changshao was really petty. "Oh." Go Xing responded and set off. He didn't take a detour, but instead continued forward. Brother Irascible was a little surprised. Could it be that I didn't make myself clear enough, or did he not hear me, so he chose to go through the front door? "Brat, you, who?" Just as the irascible bro opened his mouth, Jun Changshao, who had walked in front of him, suddenly raised his head. His eyes flashed with a monstrous rage that made the irascible bro's hair stand on end. Then, he threw a punch over. Acting like a grandson. It was just to buy the materials first. Now that I've bought everything, if you still dare to provoke me, then you're courting death. Jun Changshao had never flaunted himself as a good person. As long as someone provoked him, as long as he was angered, he wouldn't care if it was the heavens or the earth. Boom, one punch. Just one punch. Brother Irascible's cultivation was not bad, but he didn't expect the other party to be so strong and dare to attack in the fortress, so he was punched in the chest. The punch passed through layers of buildings at the entrance and sank into the city wall. This man is back. The system said. This was the host, this was the one who dared to go against the upper realm and use his face to face the upper realm's thunder calamity. After getting rid of Brother Irascible, who had repeatedly targeted him, Jun Changshao stood in the same place, his face still expressionless. However, the martial artists who gathered around were stunned. This seemingly elegant young man actually ignored the rules of the fortress, dared to attack him openly, and even killed him. This was definitely an unforgivable crime. Especially the diners who had previously questioned Jun Changshao, some of them had witnessed the scene just now, and all of them widened their eyes. Oh my God! This guy wasn't a coward. When he was ruthless, he was completely a rash person who was not afraid of anything. Because of the explosion of the spiritual energy ripples, it spread across half of the North City district, instantly attracting a large number of martial artists' spiritual senses. When they saw the destroyed buildings and saw Jun Changshao standing proudly, their eyes were filled with disbelief. He's finished. Daring to kill in the fortress, this is definitely a serious crime. The enforcers in the city will definitely be here soon. Hearing the crowd's discussion, Jun Changshao's lips curled into a smile. Torturing Brother Irascible was to be convicted. Swoosh! Swoosh! After a short while, armored soldiers rushed over from both sides of the street and quickly surrounded Jun Changshao. They pulled out their weapons from their waists and raised them as if they were guns, shouting, "Don't move." Goshen cooperated and raised his hand, then turned around. An enforcer general in charge of the North City's security shouted angrily, "Attacking in the fortress is tantamount to trampling on the rules, handcuff him." Yes. Dozens of soldiers surrounded him. Caw caw caw. Sturdy iron chains were locked on Jun Changshao's wrists like handcuffs. And he didn't resist at all, which confused the passers-by. He was so arrogant just a moment ago, why did he suddenly become weak? Patriarch Shang Yuhen, who was standing at the entrance of the tea house, saw that the patriarch was chained up. He wanted to rush over, but when he recalled his previous warning, he could only suppress that thought. Take him away. The enforcer general shouted. Caw caw caw. Jun Changshao was like a criminal, being taken away in front of the crowd. Especially the arrogant smile on his face before he left, which made the martial artists dumbfounded. The Starry Sky Fortress is built on the 9 levels of hell. This guy will be locked up as long as he commits a crime, but he can still smile. One look and I can tell that he is a ruthless person. I know the guy who was sent flying. He is from the Iron Eagle continent. He has a bad temper and a violent personality. Now that he is in such a state, his martial arts realm will probably stop here. The crowd was still discussing, but when the enforcers in the city started to clean up the destroyed environment, they dispersed and went back to their own business. What should I do? Shang Yuhen stood in place with a face of despair. Although the patriarch didn't let him out, as his disciple, how could he watch him go to jail? Patriarch Shang Yuhen clenched his fist and said, I will go find someone to reduce your crime to the lowest. Creak. In the dark prison, Jun Changshao walked in with the bracelet and anklet. This wasn't a prison, but a temporary detention center. The Starry Sky Fortress would send an adjudicator to judge. As long as the crime was judged, the adjudicator would consider whether or not to be locked up in the 9 levels of hell. Jun Changshao was locked up for 2 hours before 2 soldiers brought him out and sent to the adjudicator room. In the room, there was a middle-aged man who looked very cultured. He sat in front of a table with a brush and ink on it. He said, "You acted without permission in the Starry Sky Fortress and severely injured a martial artist. Do you plead guilty?" "Plead guilty," Jun Changshao said. The middle-aged man was stunned. He had adjudicated and interrogated many criminals, but this was the first time he saw someone so honest. Chapter 1237. The 2 epic missions were related to the 9 great martial emperors, so Jun Changshao had to sneak into the 9 levels of hell. Therefore, his confession was very straightforward. It felt like, "Big brother, I beg you, hurry up and send me to jail." The judge was stunned. After being on duty for so long, he had encountered many troublemakers. When he was in charge of interrogating them, he would either deny it or find all kinds of excuses. Yet, this person admitted it so easily. He did not follow the normal procedure at all. He praised, "Seeing that you have a good attitude, I will consider the punishment you will have to bear. Resistance will be severe, confession will be lenient." This was the kind of person who had a very proper attitude when admitting his guilt. Adjudicators liked it the most because they didn't need to waste too much time talking and they could call it a day. Jun Changzhao's face was full of question marks. Oh no, oh no. Would I be less guilty if I acted too cooperative? Gou Sheng's expression became interesting. If he knew this would happen, he would have imitated the innkeeper and acted arrogant. It's still not too late. Jun Changshao hurriedly wanted to show his wild and arrogant side, but he heard the judge say, "According to my investigation, that Iron Eagle Continent warrior has provoked you several times." Although the Starry Sky Fortress dealt with cases, they would still investigate immediately. Therefore, they knew the cause and effect of Jun Changxiao's actions. When you returned to the inn, you were blocked by him. Although you are guilty, you could not stand being provoked, so... The judge picked up a pen and wrote on the case, "I announce that you will be imprisoned in the penitence room for 7 days. No, wait, Jun Changxiao was about to speak when a few soldiers held him up. Damn it! I have to be imprisoned in the 9 levels of hell, how can I be imprisoned in the penitence room? No! Absolutely not! Jun Changxiao was about to explode in anger and add to his crimes when an old man walked in and said, "Sir, there is a cultivator called Shang Yuhen outside. He wishes to see you." Shang Yuhen? Why is he here? Just as Gou Sheng was dumbfounded, Shang Yuhen was led in by the soldiers. He first glanced at the patriarch, then politely saluted the judge, "Greetings, Lord Ji." "What is it?" Judge Ji asked. Shang Yuhen said, "Ransom him." "Who?" "Ransom my patriarch." Shang Yuhen pointed at Jun Changxiao as he spoke. Upon hearing these words, Gou Sheng almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "I'm trying my best to find a way to go to prison, but you've taken the initiative to come and redeem yourself. What a pig, disciple. AI. The system side, the host's plan to go to jail has been completely ruined. First, there was someone who pleaded guilty with an excellent attitude and received a lighter sentence. Now, there was a disciple who spent money to build connections. It would be very difficult for him to go to jail." Gou Sheng felt bitter in his heart, but Gou Sheng did not say anything. "Lord Ji." Shang Yuhen walked forward and placed a spatial ring on the table. He smiled and said, "Please make an exception." Very social. Jun Changxiao almost broke free from the soldier's restraint and kicked him to Mars. Impudent. Suddenly, Judge Ji stood up and slammed the table. He said angrily, "Ever since I took office, I have always done things according to the rules. I have never bent the law for personal gain. You giving me money is trampling on my dignity." AI, the old man standing behind shook his head. He had clearly told that fellow not to look for Lord Ji, but he did not listen. In the end, he still angered him. Judge Ji was a very honest person. He was extremely resistant to using connections to get in through the back door. In particular, he had repeatedly suggested to the fortress master to cancel the ransom rule. After all, those who were imprisoned in hell were all evil people. If they did evil during their bail period, it would only bring disaster to all living beings. No wonder when Shang Yuhen mentioned ransom, he would be displeased. When he put down the spatial ring, he could no longer hold it in and exploded on the spot. Shang Yuhen was a little stunned. "Paw!" Judge Ji slammed the table and announced, "The fortress has a rule. Anyone who bribes an official will be heavily punished. Lock them both up in the same level of hell." "Yes." "Caw caw caw." The soldiers walked over and handcuffed the stunned Shang Yuhen. Then, they took him and Jun Changshao away. "Patriarch, I didn't do it on purpose, don't speak." Shang Yuhen did not speak. The system also remained silent. Because, it had just been slapped in the face again. Not far from the judgment room, there was an entrance that led underground. Jun Changshao and Shang Yuhen were brought in like prisoners. They walked down the tunnel for about 100 meters and stopped in front of a stone door made of special materials. "Change into prison clothes." "Open the door." Ka 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 ka, the heavy stone door slowly opened. Jun Changshao and Shang Yuhen, who had changed into zebra-striped prison clothes, gradually appeared in front of the camera. One was trying hard to hold back his laughter. One was frowning. Ka ka ka. The two were sent in. The stone door closed again. The surroundings instantly turned dark. "Xiao." A light similar to a will-o'-the-wisp flew past, and the words "level of hell" appeared. "Patriarch," Shang Yuhen blamed himself, "I have let you down. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha." Jun Changshao finally could not hold it in anymore and laughed boldly. He had thought that this new disciple would be a useless teammate, but because of the bribery, he had suddenly turned into a gold medal support. "There's a scar." Jun Changshao put his hand on his shoulder and praised, "It's all thanks to you that I was able to get locked up in hell as I wished." Shang Yuhen was stunned. As he wished? Locked up in hell? Did the patriarch have a special hobby of being locked up? Clap! Jun Changshao clapped his hands together and looked at the dark environment. The corner of his mouth curled up into a unique patriarch smile. 9 levels of hell, your emperor has entered. Clap! Suddenly, light flashed in 4 directions, instantly expelling the darkness and making it abnormally bright. Shang Yuhen instinctively closed his eyes until he got used to it and opened them again. His expression immediately stiffened. In his field of vision, prisoners in prison clothes surrounded him. There were at least a few thousand of them. Some of them tilted their heads, some clenched their fists, and had evil smiles on their faces. Patriarch, Shang Yuhen subconsciously took a step closer. These prisoners that suddenly appeared, in terms of cultivation level, were obviously stronger than him. "Hey!" A prisoner on the left with a single eye patch looked at Jun Changshao and Shang Yuhen with his nostrils and said proudly, "Did you ask about the rules of the 9 levels of hell before coming in?" "What rules?" Jun Changshao asked. Although there were a lot of prisoners surrounding them, their overall strength was only at Wu Huang or half-sage level. He did not take them seriously at all. The man with the eye patch grinned and said, "The 9 levels of hell are the same as the plane. They respect martial arts. As long as you are strong enough, you are the boss. If you are weak, you are the grandson." Chapter 1238. After the fortress convicted the martial artists and locked them in hell, they were left alone. Therefore, unless the space here was smaller and there was no light all day long, it was no different from the outside world. It was even crueler than that. Because the prisoners who came in wanted to gain status and respect from their cellmates, they had to be strong. As for the weak, they could only be grandchildren. At this moment, Jun Changshao and Shang Yuhen were surrounded by their cellmates as soon as they were locked in. There were 9 levels in the 9 levels of hell. Each level had its own system and each level had its own welcoming ceremony. No one who came in was exempt from it. Jun Changshao glanced at the prisoners who were gradually approaching and said with a smile, "Then do you think I'm a grandpa or a grandson? Grandpa or grandson?" The eye-patch man touched his nose and said, "We will only know when we welcome you. Brothers, treat the two of you well." Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In an instant, thousands of prisoners unleashed their cultivation and rushed over like brothers. Paw! The lights in all four directions were turned off. One level of hell fell into darkness again, and the gloomy aura erupted again. Boom! Boom! Spiritual energy in martial arts flashed, bringing a short period of light. About 10 minutes later, there was no sound or movement in the prison. The gloomy aura was even more creepy. Swish! Suddenly, a wisp of flame appeared. Jun Changxiao's face appeared, and then he lit the cigar in his mouth, raised his head and blew out a smoke ring. Because the black robe on his head had been taken off, coupled with the faintly discernible flame, his entire head could be said to be shiny. Paw! At this moment, the lights were turned on again, and the prison was bright. Shang Yuhen stood in his original position with a blank expression on his face. Then, he raised his head stiffly and looked at Jun Changshao, who was higher up. Why was he higher up? Because the thousands of prisoners who attacked just now were all bruised and battered together. Jun Changshao sat at the top and smoked. His pretentious aura was unprecedentedly strong. He closed his eyes and sang, "How lonely it is to be invincible. How empty it is to be invincible. Alone at the top. Pooh! Pooh!" The prisoners, who were piled together like building blocks, seemed to have suffered heavy injuries to their internal organs once again. They all spat out blood on the spot. Other people needed money to sing, but Gosheng's singing was life-threatening. She who hides in the horizon, can she not listen to me, my loneliness, my endless loneliness? Pooh! Just as Jun Changshao dragged out the word lonely, Shang Yuhen, who was standing below, could not help but spit out blood. Even those who were not injured could hear the internal injuries. It could be seen that although Gosheng was extremely handsome, he did not have any talent in singing. He was destined to be an actor and not a trainee. After he finished singing, Jun Changshao still raised his head and closed his eyes, completely immersed in the feeling of being invincible and lonely. Ah, patriarch! Shang Yuhen suppressed the boiling blood in his body and stopped him. "Stop singing. If you continue singing, this disciple might die." The prisoners who were piled up together and bleeding from their 7 orifices agreed wholeheartedly. All right. Jun Changshao gave up the idea of relaxing his heart and grabbed the eye-masked man lying next to him. "Who's the master and who's the grandson?" You're the master, I'm the grandson." Shwa! Jun Changshao directly threw him down, then jumped up and sat directly on his back. He crossed his legs and put his hands together. "From now on, I'm the boss of this level of hell. Who agrees and who disagrees?" "Yes. I agree." The eye-masked man who was pressed down was the first to speak. He had been squatting here for a long time and had welcomed nearly 70% of the prisoners. Although he had encountered powerful masters and suffered losses, today was the first time he had encountered someone so powerful. Thousands of people had been taken care of in such a short period of time. I agree. I agree. The prisoners all expressed their opinions. The new prisoner was powerful, and his singing was super good. Only a fool would oppose him. This was the 9th level of hell. This was what it meant to be respected with strength. When Jun Changshao showed his absolute strength and beat up the prisoners who've welcomed him, they immediately approved of him. In the outside world, some people might not only not approve, but also hold a grudge and seek revenge from the older generation. Seeing the prisoners give in, Shang Yuhen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said in admiration, "Patriarch is simply too powerful." Because his ancestor was trapped in the 9th level of hell, he had some understanding of this place. To be able to conquer all the prisoners, and even a level of hell, it definitely represented strength. Caw caw caw. Caw 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 caw. At this moment, the sound of chains came from a place where the light could not reach. Shang Yuhen turned his head and looked, and a look of horror appeared in his eyes. In the darkness, a person with disheveled hair walked over barefooted. His hands were naturally hanging down, and the long chain dragged on the ground. His prison uniform was different from the others, and the two words, main offender, were very conspicuous on the chest. Jun Changshao frowned. Although the prisoner who suddenly appeared was dirty and sloppy, and although his appearance could not be seen clearly, the aura around him was obviously at the lower level of the void-piercing realm. Expert. Expert. Patriarch. Shang Yuhan transmitted, this is the main offender of a level of hell. Main offender? Jun Changshao had never heard of it. Shang Yuhan hurriedly explained, every level of the 9th level of hell imprisons the main offender, and they are all unpardonable evildoers. If they are released casually, it will bring disaster to the mortal world. Kakik. Suddenly, the main offender stopped, and pushed his disheveled hair aside, revealing a pair of extremely empty eyes, and said with a hoarse voice, young man, what is unpardonable evildoer? Shang Yuhen was dumbfounded. He had just communicated with the patriarch using the sound transmission technique, could it be that he could hear it? Kakik. The main offender laughed strangely, young man, do you know that there is a divine beast called Di-Ting in the Yama continent? Di-Ting? Shang Yuhen suddenly remembered that there was a divine beast called Di-Ting in the Yama continent, and it could recognize all things in the world by listening, especially the heart. Could it be, he was Di-Ting? Jun Changshao had also heard of Di-Ting, and it was from the journey to the west, but he did not expect that there would be such a thing in a different martial arts universe. I have cultivated for tens of thousands of years to reach my current strength, and because I accidentally heard something that I should not have heard, I was locked in a level of hell by the Starry Sky Fortress. May I ask, what is this unpardonable evildoer? The main offender's face was ferocious, and it was obvious that he was extremely angry. And you? He pointed at Jun Changshao, and almost roared, I can roughly hear the heart of any living being in the mortal world, but why can't I hear yours? Jun Changshao's expression was a bit interesting. What does it have to do with me if you can't hear me? Why are you so angry? Maybe, Jun Changshao said with a melancholy look, I am too handsome, you can't penetrate my heart. Chapter 1239. The main culprit imprisoned in the first level of hell wasn't too strong, at most a commander. This level was very common outside, let alone in prison. To be honest, it was a little weak. Jun Changshao might be able to fight with him if he used all kinds of trump cards. The stronghold defined him as the main culprit, not because of his realm, but because he had the ability to eavesdrop on others' thoughts. What he said. Sound transmission. Even the thoughts in one's heart could be easily stolen. This kind of special skill was very awesome, especially when it could see through the enemy's thoughts in battle. It was equivalent to opening a transparent cheat. In fact, it was indeed so. Before entering, this main culprit was rarely defeated, until he was targeted by the stronghold's 12 patrol envoys. This meant that the ability to see through one's thoughts wasn't absolutely invincible, and in the face of martial artists stronger than himself, he could only be obedient. However, the main culprit was now broken. The bald man who just came in and got rid of thousands of prisoners, his overall strength was barely at the threshold of the lower void-piercing realm, so why couldn't he hear his thoughts? Special skills in front of the same level or even lower level were absolutely tested and tested. Now that it seemed to have failed, he was definitely unhappy and had to figure it out, so he walked out of the darkness. He's here. The eye patch man was shocked. That guy is here. The prisoners stacked together couldn't care about the pain in their bodies at this moment, because their consciousness was dominated by fear. The main culprit of the first level of hell sat like a monk in an area that couldn't be covered by light all year round. Although he didn't have a sense of existence, the prisoners were still very afraid of him. After all, he was defined as the main culprit by the stronghold, so he was definitely an existence that couldn't be provoked. Immediately after, everyone almost vomited blood on the spot. Jun Changshao actually said that it was because he was handsome, and his thoughts weren't seen through. How could he have the nerve to say such shameless words? And he said it so naturally and smoothly. Even the micro-expression on his face revealed a feeling of, "I'm so handsome." The main culprit was also stunned. "Kid." He grinned and said, "Your skin is thick, I'm afraid it's not weaker than the guy locked up below." "It's not that I'm thick-skinned, but it's the truth," Jun Changshao said without blushing. The system said, "I'll say first, the host's thoughts not being heard has nothing to do with me. It's very likely that the host's skin is too thick to be seen through." The main culprit laughed strangely. "I heard you say that you want to be the boss of a floor of hell." "Not bad," Jun Changshao said. "Do you agree or disagree?" He too. The main culprit spat out a mouthful of phlegm, raised his head, and looked at Go Sheng with his nostrils. He said proudly, "I object." Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. Jun Changshao had already appeared in front of the main culprit. He gathered all the spiritual energy in his right fist and blasted the man's abdomen. The air blast that erupted in an instant sent the eye patch man and the others flying. Oppose? They were going to punish him. Jun Changshao didn't follow the rules even in the planar battlefield. Now that he was in a prison where strength was respected, he would definitely abuse anyone who dared to oppose him. "Your emperor is here." Go Sheng didn't just say that casually. Not only did he have to rescue the trapped 9 thearchs, but he also had to subdue all the prisoners here. Why? The sect of all times, Tianyuan Prison Pagoda, needed their souls. Before entering the 9th floor of hell, Jun Changshao thought that if the fortress offended him, he would release all the prisoners inside and make them busy. After entering and seeing so many powerful prisoners, he immediately changed his plan. They would be imprisoned in the fortress hell and in the sect of all times. Since they were all imprisoned, why not transfer all of them and raise them to be his disciples' sparring partners? This idea was very Go Sheng. Thump, thump, thump. The main culprit who was attacked staggered a few steps back. He only had the power of one commander. He couldn't read Jun Changshao's mind, which was equivalent to having half of his martial arts crippled. "You!" The main culprit clutched his chest and said angrily, "You actually stole." Swish! Jun Changshao suddenly disappeared and instantly appeared behind him. His right fist was covered by the mechanical wings. With the support of his realm and tools, he instantly gathered even more power. Needless to say, this god-modified tool that he had bought a long time ago was still on the verge of being eliminated as Go Sheng's strength continued to increase. It was working hard to release its value. Boom! An even more intense boom rang out from the first level of hell. Then, the main culprit was sent flying out of the ground, crashing into the prison wall with a head-on posture. Oh my god! The eyes of the eye patch man instantly widened. The main culprit of the first floor of hell, not to mention having special abilities, had already reached the lower level of the void-piercing realm. Yet, he couldn't defeat the bald man. The prisoner lying in the distance had an interesting expression. He actually ran out to entertain such a ferocious guy. He was really an old man who wanted to hang himself. Swish! At this moment, Jun Changshao rushed over again. One hand clasped the back of the main culprit's head, and then repeatedly pressed against the wall. Instantly, there was a rumbling sound. The eye patch man and the prisoners were so shocked that their scalps went numb. Ruthless. Too ruthless. Could it be that because the main culprit said that he objected, he was subjected to such abnormally horrible abuse? Fortunately, he judged the situation and chose to agree, otherwise. Right, the 2 readers who objected in the comments of the chapter, were they okay now? Boom! 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 In the first floor of hell, the strong collision sound came frequently. Hearing it made one's back turn cold and hair stand on end. Although the main culprit was at the lower level of the void-piercing realm, If he didn't rely on special abilities, then he was really very ordinary. What about Jun Changshao? A long time ago, he had dealt with the handsome man. Although he used all kinds of trump cards, his cultivation wasn't high at that time. Now, not only did he break through to the peak, but he also triggered an epic mission. Every time he reached the highest point of a realm, he would trigger an epic mission. This also meant that Jun Changshao had reached the peak of the peak level and was only a small step away from entering the martial emperor realm. The enemy was at the level of the handsome man, and Go Xing's body had improved greatly. Later, he was also tempered by the spirit of the fire spirit, and there were 2 infant spirit hosts in his dantian. Therefore, in terms of true strength, even without the support of the hard-to-retract blade and the stone statue's power, he could totally fight against the lower level of the void-piercing realm with the strength of a commander, and even beat him up ruthlessly. Plop! After more than 10 minutes of violence and hundreds of times of abuse, the main culprit who objected lay on the ground like mud. Because his head had hit the prison wall, it was already swollen to an indescribable degree. Shwa! Jun Changshao squatted down, grabbed his prisoner's uniform, and said in a gloomy voice, "I am the boss of the first floor of hell. Do you agree or disagree?" In the distance, the eye-patch man and the prisoner lying on the ground pretending to be dead howled in their hearts together. The one who came in is not a prisoner, but a terrifying demon. Chapter 1240. Prisoners who were sent to the first level of hell would be bullied by those who came first. This had already become a common practice. However, after Jun Changshao came in, the situation changed. That was because he had tortured the thousands of prisoners who had come to welcome him. He had even tortured the main culprit. The Starry Sky Fortress did not send prisoners, but a green-faced, fanged demon. Damn it. The main culprit, who had been tortured miserably, had a hideous expression on his face. He had been the boss of the first level of hell for so long. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? Jun Changshao said coldly, "You still object?" Ah! Suddenly, the main culprit roared angrily. Huff huff huff. In an instant, a majestic and vicious aura surged out from his body and enveloped him and Jun Changshao. The eye-patch man was shocked and hurriedly dodged. The prisoner who had pretended to be dead quickly got up and ran away. He was so fast that it looked like he was not injured at all. Roar! After everyone reached a place that they thought was absolutely safe, a deafening roar came. Their bodies were instantly corroded, and all of them spat out blood. Wang! Wang! Energy ripples spread out frequently in the prison. A huge creature with a horn on its head that looked like a dragon but was not a dragon, a dog but was not a dog, gradually emerged from the energy ripples. Dieting! Shang Yuhen exclaimed, "It really is dieting." Huff huff. The wind howled, and it was extremely cold. Jun Changshao's body also gradually appeared. He stood in front of the huge creature, and his body was only comparable to the other party's toe. Brat! Dieting glared and said in a low voice, "The dignity of a spiritual divine beast is not something you can profane." Die! Huff huff. Dieting lifted its huge foot and stomped down on Jun Changshao. The strength it contained was as heavy as a mountain. After a beast transformed into its true form, all aspects would be greatly improved. Therefore, Dieting's current strength was definitely above one commander's power. It was definitely 1/5 commander's power. Boom! A powerful shockwave swept out in all directions. Fortunately, the prisoners were far enough away. Although they were unavoidably affected, the power was relatively weak. The main culprit has gone mad. Fear appeared in the eyes of the eye-patch man. He knew that the Harken was a beast, but this was the first time he had seen it in its true form. For the new prisoner to be able to force the other party to this extent, he could definitely die without regrets. Wait a minute. The eyeballs of the eye-patch man almost popped out of their sockets. In his field of vision, the gigantic foot did not connect with the ground. This was because Jun Changshao's hands were holding up the sky as he proudly received it. Swish! Swish! At the same time, his entire body was enveloped by a golden light. After it dissipated, the Xianyuan godly armor appeared, emitting an intimidating aura. How is this possible? The Harkon's eyes were filled with disbelief. Although his strength was not the strongest in the mortal universe, if he transformed into his true form and kicked down, it was definitely not something that an ordinary lower void-piercing realm cultivator could easily withstand. You! Jun Changshao frowned. How long has it been since you washed your feet? Wow! After saying that, he couldn't help but vomit. In terms of strength, it was difficult for Truth Listener to harm Jun Changshao, who was protected by the Shenyuan divine armor. However, the feet that had not been washed for thousands of years brought negative attacks to the other party. How smelly was that? Get out of here! Go Sheng was furious. The two kinds of infant spirits in his dantian flickered. Two special and powerful forces rushed up his left and right arms, directly lifting up the smelly foot. The Harkon's eyes were filled with horror. In the next second, the gigantic body fell to the side uncontrollably. Boom! The mountain-like body fell to the ground with a loud bang, shocking the eye-patch man and the other prisoners. Not to mention the Harkon's own strength, just its weight alone was lifted over. This was too exaggerated. Swish! At this moment, Jun Changshao flew into the air, stretched out his right hand to face the Harkon below, and said angrily, "I'll help you wash your feet." Huff! In an instant, extremely hot flames gushed out like a fountain. Ah! Ah! The flames that contained the power of purification enveloped the foot and began to burn it from the inside out. The Harkon screamed like a pig being slaughtered, which made one's scalp tingle. The spirit of the fire soul could purify evil spirits, and it also had an effect on beasts because there would always be hostility in the body. Huff! Huff! The scorching flames burned wildly and even seemed to be stuck. No matter how hard the Harkon shook, it did not extinguish. Instead, it became more and more powerful as it resisted. The burning of the body and the torture of the soul caused the Harkon to be in extreme pain. Its screams changed the pitch. Gradually, the eye-patch man and the prisoners smelled the barbecue. Swish! Jun Changshao flew over and hovered above the Harkon's head, saying, "You're dirty all over. Let me help you wash." Huff! An even more majestic power of the fire soul erupted and pressed down like a wave. Gulp! The eye-patch man and the others swallowed their saliva in unison. With such a huge momentum and such powerful flames, if they were to be completely enveloped and burned, the taste would definitely be worse than being thrown into a pot of oil. The moment the flames pressed down on its body, the Harkon gave up the dignity that a divine beast should have and howled in pain. Agree. Ah! Ga! The scorching flames suddenly stopped in place and immediately returned to its master's body and merged with the fire soul. Ta! Jun Changshao landed on the Harkon's head and touched its horn with one hand, saying gently, "Be good and listen to me. Hurry up and sign the master-servant contract with me." The corners of everyone's mouth twitched. Signing the master-servant contract was equivalent to selling one's body, and even one's freedom would be taken away. Huff! The flames on the foot were still burning, and a crackling sound could be heard vaguely. It seemed to be going from being cooked to being burnt. The Harkon was really uncomfortable. It was a pity that there was no one like Li Fei to talk to. In just 0.01 seconds, it made a choice that it did not know whether the future was good or bad. I agree. Swish! The flames that were burning its body and roasting its soul vanished. The huge hoof was now fully cooked, and the eye-patch man and the others could come over to take a bite and comment on the taste. Whoosh! Without the torment of the flames, the Harkon was finally freed from the pot of oil. Then, it obediently relaxed its mind and began to sign the master-servant contract with Jun Changshao. In its heart, it cried, "I shouldn't have come out." Half an hour later, Jun Changshao jumped down from the Harkon's head. The latter prostrated itself on the ground and bowed respectfully, "Greetings, master." Everyone was instantly thrown into disarray. In just a short period of time, the main culprit of the entire abyssal underworld, the divine beast that could listen to the hearts of all living beings, had been subdued by the bald man and even become his contracted beast. Had they not witnessed it with their own eyes, they might have thought that they were dreaming. Whoosh! Because Xiao Ziji was not by his side, Jun Changshao pulled out a chair and sat on it. He then crossed his legs and glanced coldly at the prisoners. From now on, I'm the boss of the entire abyssal underworld. Chapter 1241. The First Level of Hell. The atmosphere changed from the intense battle to a harmonious one. The eye-patch man and the other prisoners surrounded Jun Changshao. Some massaged his shoulders, some massaged his back, and some even handed him tea. They were all extremely humble. Gulp, gulp. Go Xing rinsed his mouth with tea before turning his head to the side and spitting it into the bowl. He asked like a big boss, "Is there a way to go to the second level of hell?" Although he had taken care of one level of hell, there were still 8 levels below. The Emperor's conquest had just begun. Boss. The eye-patch man said, each level of hell is scarier than the last. It's best not to. Seeing Jun Changshao's eyes turn cold, he quickly pointed into the distance and changed his words. There's a teleportation array in front that leads to the second level. What are the conditions? No. As long as you're willing to go in, you'll be teleported immediately. That's simple. Jun Changshao smiled. Master. The Harken, who had transformed into its human form, lay on the ground weakly and said, if you're not directly sent in by the fortress, you'll be seen as a challenge if you go down using the teleportation array. It'll be fine if you win. But if you lose, you'll be locked up in hell forever. Yes. In order to show his absolute submission, the eye-patch man said, ever since hell was built, very few people have dared to go down. Boss, you must think twice before you act. Schwa. Jun Changshao stood up and everyone left. What others don't dare to do, I have to do. After saying that, he strode towards the teleportation array. Boss is a real man. Boss is mighty and domineering. The prisoners watched as Jun Changshao left. Of course, this was not flattery, but true admiration. After all, after being locked up for so long, this was the first time they saw someone who dared to go to the second level of hell. Actually, the prisoners' strength and crimes decided what level they were locked up in. The fortress also had a detailed division. The first level of hell was a mass prison. If the crime wasn't too serious and the strength wasn't too high, they would be locked up here. As for the second and third levels, each level would be stronger and more terrifying than the last. Patriarch. Shang Yuhen said, disciple will accompany you. Although he had just joined the sect of all times and had never experienced the culture of the sect, he seemed to have been blessed with the unyielding spirit buff by the late sect leader Wang. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, it might be very dangerous down there. You should stay in the first layer of hell. Coming here was equivalent to entering the Tower of Trials, and it would only get more and more difficult. He really didn't want to bring his disciples into danger. The system said, you just don't want to bring a burden with you. Why do you have to create the image of a great patriarch? Pigeon kiss. Shang Yuhen also knew his place. After a short moment of consideration, he said, disciple will stay here and wait for the patriarch to return. Yes. Jun Changshao continued forward. Soon, at the end of the darkness, he saw a formation diagram that seemed to have lost its function. Boss. The man with the eye patch said, this is the transmission array. Jun Changshao nodded. Just as he was about to enter, he suddenly thought of something. He turned around and asked, Yuhen, if you meet your ancestor down there, do you have anything you want me to tell him? Yes. Shang Yuhen remembered that his ancestor was still locked up in hell, so he quickly took out an item and said, Patriarch, this is the token of the Shang dynasty. If you meet my ancestor, you can pass this to him. It was a token with the word Shang carved on it, and it contained a special power. Jun Changshao took it and didn't look at it. He stood up and walked into the array. He said to the man with the eye patch, "You guys, take good care of my disciple and contracted beast. If they feel uncomfortable, show." Before he could finish, he was teleported away. Actually, Goshen's words were a little redundant, because after he left, the man with the eye patch and the prisoners immediately surrounded him and treated him like a boss. They were just short of bringing him to the chair to massage his shoulders and back. The second layer of hell. Guanzhou and He Qi stood in front of two stone platforms, trembling, and then lay down skillfully. "Pa! Pa!" Hui Yenyao, who was standing at the back, raised his hand and slapped the two men's buttocks rhythmically. He had a look of enjoyment on his face. No one else had the interest of listening to the sound of the spanking. Hui Yenyao used a lot of strength, causing Guanzhou and He Qi to be in pain. However, they didn't dare to scream during the process because it would make the other party even worse. "Master! Come and save us!" Guanzhou and He Qi were screaming in pain in their hearts. This master wasn't referring to the owner of the fortress, but to Jun Changshao. The two brothers were locked up in the second layer of hell and thought for a long time. They roughly guessed that they were locked up because they were exposed. Every time they were tortured to the point of collapse, they could only ask for help in their hearts. Of course, Guanzhou and He Qi were very clear that this was just their imagination. In fact, why would their master come to such a dangerous place to save them? He might even accidentally become their cellmate. "Pa pa pa." Hui Yenyao was still waving his hand and his expression was getting more and more relaxed. Hiding in the dark, those prisoners who had been tortured before were all frightened. They looked at Hui Yenyao sympathetically and said to themselves, "I hope he is satisfied. Otherwise, everyone will be in trouble." Wang! Suddenly, the teleportation portal in the distance shone and a light ward appeared. The prisoners in the second layer of hell were stunned. Damn! A prisoner in the first layer of hell came down. The teleportation portal in the second layer of hell had existed for a long time. As it could only be transported down and not up, it didn't exist at all. Now that it was activated, the prisoners were naturally surprised. Hui Yenyao stopped his violence and turned around. He grinned and said, "It has been a long time since a prisoner dared to come from the first layer to the second layer." Guanzhou and He Qi were also shocked. The two brothers were once from the fortress and had a rough understanding of the situation in hell. This kind of situation was very rare, unless someone had too much to drink or wanted to pursue an even more extreme thrill. "What are you waiting for?" Hui Yenyao shouted, "Hurry up and prepare to welcome the guests." Shwa! 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 In an instant, the prisoners in the second layer of hell walked toward the teleportation portal. As their backs were facing the camera, they could clearly see that their buttocks were swollen and their walking posture was quite strange. Sigh! It seemed that they had been tortured quite a bit. Guanzhou and He Qi were overjoyed. Suddenly, someone fearlessly came from the first layer to the second layer and attracted Hui Yenyao's attention. They could be temporarily relieved. Swoosh! At this moment, the teleportation portal's light dimmed and a figure gradually appeared. He walked out and opened his hands. "The second layer of hell, your emperor is here." Such a face, such a voice, Guanzhou and He Qi's expressions stiffened. They then said in their hearts in disbelief, "He is here. He is here. He is really here." Chapter 1242. Although Jun Changshao had disguised himself, he did not deliberately change his voice. Therefore, when he walked out of the teleportation circle and spoke, Guanzhou and He Qi immediately recognized him. They were just praying for their master to save them, but they soon came down from the first level of hell. This was simply. If not for the constant pain coming from their buttocks, they might have thought it was a dream. Jun Changshao frowned. After entering the second level of hell, he instantly sensed two very familiar auras. Therefore, he looked over and immediately found Guanzhou and He Qi. Strange. How did the two of them end up in prison? Strange. Why were they lying on the platform? Why were their buttocks so swollen? All the questions in his head instantly converged into one question, which was that they were beaten and abused by someone. Guan Zhou and He Qi were also looking at Jun Changshao. Every day after he was sent to prison was replayed in fast forward. Their eyes instantly became moist. They did not bother to hide it and said in grief, "Master, save us." These words were filled with endless grievances, which made the readers cry and Jun Changshao's face turn gloomy. Who hit them? Me. Hui Yenyao grinned. He thought to himself, this little guy is so soft and tender. It must feel good to hit his buttocks. In a short time, he had already outlined all kinds of scenes in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more he smiled. If it was a normal novel reader, they would definitely label this person as a villain and would not tolerate the protagonist being bullied. Gou Sheng's readers would probably collectively say, "Hurry up and let that scene come, we can't wait." Seeing the word main culprit written on the prisoner's uniform, Jun Changshao said with a cold face, "You're the boss of the second level of hell." "That's right." Hui Yenyao smiled. Jun Changshao was a little surprised. He did not expect to meet a boss directly in the second level of hell. He could totally deal with it directly, saving effort, worry, and time. "What's your name?" Hui Yenyao. Jun Changshao thought to himself, wouldn't it be flirtatious in reverse? He pointed at Guan Zhou and He Qi and said calmly, "The two you're fighting are my subordinates." "So what?" Hui Yenyao grinned. "As the saying goes," Jun Changshao said, "before beating a dog, you have to look at its master. Your Excellency has beaten my two subordinates so miserably, it's really, schwa." He suddenly disappeared and reappeared in front of Hui Yenyao. A powerful force gathered in his fist and punched out. Swish! The powerful fist passed right through his opponent's body and dissipated like smoke. Jun Changshao frowned. "Doppelganger? Who? At this moment, a cold gust of wind came from the side, and the force it carried made him feel uneasy. Although Jun Changshao had cheated all the way, he was still quite experienced in actual combat. Therefore, when he sensed the danger, he was unable to effectively avoid it. He instantly formed a defensive barrier on the side. This alone made him look like a martial Dao master. However, the force that came from the side suddenly changed direction. First, it bypassed the defensive barrier and then came at a tricky angle that Jun Changshao did not expect. A crisp sound rang in the second floor of hell. After the prisoners and Guan Zhou heard it, the muscles on their buttocks stiffened subconsciously. Ah! Jun Changshao let out a strange cry and then staggered back while covering his butt that was hit. His expression was ferocious and angry. He was following the logic of a normal person and set up a defense as quickly as possible. However, he never expected that the other party was not a normal person and attacked his buttocks. Therefore, he was inevitably hit. He. Hui Yenyao raised his hand and laughed, "Your butt is quite tender." Seeing the weird smile on that guy's face, Jun Changshao roared, "You're a pervert." "Master," Guan Zhou hurriedly transmitted his voice, "this guy likes to spank other people's buttocks. You must be careful." "Likes to spank?" Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. No wonder their buttocks were swollen to different degrees. "I take back what I said just now. This guy is a complete pervert. Let's not talk about what kind of heinous crimes he committed. Just based on his bad taste, he deserves to be locked up in prison." Although Jun Changshao was furious, he did not rush forward. This was because he understood that the other party's strength was definitely much stronger than Di Ting. It would be troublesome for him to deal with him. "Kid!" Hui Yenyao laughed, "Hurry up and raise your butt." Jun Changshao clenched his fists. This main culprit is really a flirtatious guy. He really deserves a beating. Ding! Side mission activated. A notification sounded in his ears. Jun Changshao thought to himself, "Don't tell me it's asking me to kill him." He pulled open the data interface and clicked on the side mission. Gosheng almost fainted when he saw the content. Host, please do not be spanked 110 times by Hui Yenyao within 30 minutes. Otherwise, the mission will fail. Damn it! What kind of mission is this? The side mission was either to kill the target or have a time limit. To prevent being spanked by the target was really weird. Moreover, what made Jun Changshao unable to accept the most was that the spanking before the mission even came was also included. This is too shameless. The system complained, maybe he was infected by the host. Suddenly, Hui Yenyao appeared behind him. Although Jun Changshao noticed it immediately and tried to defend himself, it was still useless. His right butt was hit again. The mission panel immediately became 210 times. Damn it! Pa 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 pa! At this moment, Hui Yenyao used both his hands to hit Jun Changshao's butt from tricky angles. The number instantly soared to 610 times. Before a minute had passed, he had already exceeded half of the mission. He had persisted for 29 minutes and there was no hope at all. Ah ah ah! Jun Changshao roared angrily. Pa! Hui Yenyao took the opportunity to hit him again. A happy smile appeared on his face. Obviously, it was more comfortable than hitting Guanzhou and He Qi. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Jun Changshao could not sit still and wait for his death. He hurriedly used his movement technique to run. Since the mission required him to not be hit 10 times, as long as he could survive for 29 minutes, it would be considered complete. If he were to face Hui Yenyao head-on, Jun Changshao might need to use his trump card. However, if he chose to hide, it should not be a problem. I'm really a genius, Pa! Jun Changshao, who was running at full speed, was hit on his butt again. His opponent's hands seemed to have magical powers that could suddenly reach him in an area that he could not see. Master! Guanzhou said, this person has a special ability. He can hit the butt 100% of the time. No matter how strong the enchantment is, it will not work. Fuck him. Jun Changshao cursed in his heart. Pa! At this moment, Hui Yenyao hit Gosheng's butt again. The number of hits increased from 8 to 9. Jun Changshao's heart was about to explode. It hadn't even been a minute and he had already been beaten 9 times. Brat! Suddenly, Hui Yenyao's strange laughter rang in his ears. I'm here, I'm really here. Who? The palm imprint, which contained some kind of power, passed through Jun Changshao's defensive barrier and swung over. It could be said that it was very close to his butt. Ah! Just when the mission was about to fail, Jun Changshao's cosmic chakra armament haki and other attributes were completely released, and then he roared with blue veins bursting out, see through at a glance. Poochie! The scene of the second floor of hell seemed to freeze. After a while, ah! Chapter 1243. Hui Yenyao liked to spank others. This kind of uncivilized behavior could only be classified as perverted, or with a twisted personality. Hitting others was no problem. But fighting Jun Changshao, and being beaten 9 times in a row, was really not okay. Fuck him. I won't pretend anymore. I'll lay my cards on the table. You like spanking, right? That's too much of a coincidence. I've also done some research on buttocks. Let's hurt each other together. Therefore, when Hui Yenyao hit him for the 10th time, Jun Changshao took out his riding rivers and mountains without saying a word. Then, according to the inherited memories given to him, he allowed the former to return to his first form and directly used the sure kill skill, look through. The entire process happened in 0.001 seconds. That indescribable and invisible force instantly erupted, and then fiercely stabbed towards the other party's buttocks. Under normal circumstances, the first form of pointing rivers and mountains might not be able to succeed, but Hui Yenyao was immersed in the joy of being spanked, so his awareness of defense was very poor. Moreover, He did not expect to meet an opponent who could stab his buttocks. If one had to use an idiom to describe it, Hui Yanniao and Jun Changshao would be a pervert, a pervert, a pervert, and a pervert together. Every species had their weakest side, and the weakest part of a human, no matter how high or low their realm was, would always be at a few fixed points. For example, the temple, the Baihui point, and also, Hui Yanniao was also a human. Therefore, when the sure-kill skill was used, and then accurately reached the destination, the pain it brought was completely. Experienced readers can describe it, but I have never experienced it before. Ah! Oh, 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 Hui Yanniao was like a monkey in the sky. He flew up from his attacking posture and hit the ceiling with his head. Then, he fell to the ground. His butt was still emitting green smoke. Hiss! The prisoners all sucked in a breath of cold air. The chill from his butt instantly spread throughout his body. Being hit on the buttocks was only painful, but being attacked in that kind of place. I'm afraid it's better to die. Ta! 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 Jun Changshao walked over with the pointing rivers and mountains in his hand, and then placed a hand on the other party's forehead, and said, "Does it feel good?" Previous chapter. Next chapter. Boom. He lifted it and pressed it to the ground. Answer me. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Boom. Is it good or not? Previous chapter. Next chapter. Next chapter. Boom. 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 With his weakest spot being attacked, Hui Yanniao had lost most of his fighting strength. Now that he was being crazily smashed and his face was on the ground, his head was filled with stars, sparkling one after another. You too. Jun Changshao said, "Come here and vent your anger." Yes. Guanzhou and He Qi covered their butts as they walked over. The grievances and anger he had accumulated during this period of time suddenly erupted. He raised his leg and kicked Hui Yanniao's butt. The prisoner shivered. In his heart, he also had the urge to run over and kick him. Ding! Side mission completed. 20,000 contribution points awarded. Ding! Sect contribution points, 120,000/100,000 points. Ding! Overflow of Sect contribution points. Half an hour later, because Hui Yanniao's weak point had been ruthlessly stabbed and he had been brutally tortured by Jun Changshao and Guanzhou, he had completely lost his combat ability. Therefore, the side quest had been successfully completed. It can't be. Only 20,000 points. Jun Changshao was not satisfied with the contribution points. After all, the enemies they were facing now were usually at the lower level of the void-piercing realm. If they didn't have 50,000, wouldn't they have the nerve to use it as a reward? He's too arrogant. The system said, he's even more arrogant than the author who went to Beijing. Ding! Side mission completed. Hidden reward triggered. Obtained Lingyan Pavilion's exclusive Divine Weapon Modification Stone X1, obtained another bottle X1. Jun Changshao smiled. The modification stone was not bad. Another bottle would be great. With this item, it was equivalent to having a chance to raise his realm. He still needed to break through the next 7 levels. With it in hand, he would definitely be more at ease to cause trouble. You guys. Jun Changshao sat on Hui Yanniao's body. The exclusive divine weapon in the form of Finger of Mountains and Rivers scanned the prisoners of the second level of hell one by one. He said in a cold voice, "I'm the boss of this level of hell. Who agrees and who disagrees?" Agree. The prisoners said in unison. Di Ting of the first level of hell rarely appeared, so his relationship with his prisoners was rather subtle. Hui Yanniao of this level of hell, because of his special hobbies, was usually quite active. Any prisoner who came in had been carefully taken care of and hated him very much. Now that Go Sheng had dealt with him in a way crueler than spanking him, it was really quite satisfying. Therefore, they were willing to obey unconditionally. What's more, the main culprit had been dealt with. If they insisted on fighting, their fate would definitely not be as simple as being spanked. The prisoners who were imprisoned in the 9th level of hell, of course, were here for some crimes. However, after being abused for a long time, they had long adapted to the law of the jungle. Today, Jun Changshao dealt with Hui Yenyao and got their approval. Tomorrow, when Jun Changshao was dealt with by a stronger person, they would definitely immediately approve of the other party. This was very realistic and very real. Of course, Jun Changshao just wanted to experience the pleasure of dominating each level of hell. As for whether the other party sincerely approved of him or not, it was no longer important. Because as long as the conditions allowed, Tianyuan Prison Pagoda would be their eternal and warm home. After dealing with the main culprit of the 2nd level of hell, Jun Changshao first sealed the other party's cultivation. Then, he got up and walked to the transmission formation to the 3rd level of hell. Guanzhou and He Qi, who were in charge of watching Hui Yenyao, watched him disappear in the formation. They both admired him and said, "Master is so powerful." The main culprit of the 2nd level of hell was an unpardonable person. His cultivation was also much stronger than his. However, he was crippled in one move. It depended on the person. If it was the middle void-piercing state, it would be very difficult to deal with the first form of Pointer of World. Plop! Plop! In the dark 3rd level of hell, the sound of falling was instantly heard. Thousands of prisoners, whose strength was at the level of Wu Huang, Half-Saint, and even Wu Sheng, fell down one after another, covering their smoking buttocks. The pain made their eyelids twitch. They had suffered an indescribable attack. Why? Because Jun Changshao was standing proudly in the center area at the moment. His eyes were bigger than a cow's. Obviously, he was using the expression of seeing through with one glance. After the upgrade of Pointer of World, not only could it restore its form at will, but it could also use the killing move twice. They had suffered an indescribable attack. Gulp. Standing in front of the rocking chair, a burly man covered in scars swallowed a mouthful of saliva. A few drops of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. From the 2 words, main culprit, written on his prisoner uniform, he was obviously the boss of the 3rd level of hell. No one knew his name. But because he had an impenetrable body, he was called the Iron Marquis. From the exposed solid muscles, it could be seen that his physical body should be very outstanding. However, as a defensive martial artist who had cultivated something like the Virgin Technique and the Vajra Shield Iron Skin Technique since young, he must have obvious weaknesses, such as his eyes, armpits, and the smoking area of his butt. The Iron Marquis face became ferocious. Schwa! Suddenly, his pupils contracted, because Jun Changshao had appeared in front of him. The tip of the pointer of rivers and mountains was pressed against his forehead. Jun Changshao's voice was indifferent as he said, "You can withstand my first move, but can you withstand my second?" Chapter 1244. Jun Changshao came down from the 2nd floor of hell, which made Iron Marquis very surprised. Then, he brought his subordinates to surround him, but they were all killed by the other party's AoE. Of course. The main culprit of the 3rd floor of hell was capable. His physical defense was incomparable to the previous 2, so although it was a bit painful to take a look, he could at least stand and retain most of his combat strength. However, if he were to do it again, even an immortal would not be able to withstand it. "Friend." Iron Marquis loosened his clenched fists and admitted defeat. "Let's talk nicely." This guy was still considered good. Truth Listener and Hui Yenyao didn't even have the time to admit defeat before they were beaten to the point of losing their combat strength. "I want to be the boss of the 3rd floor of hell." Jun Changshao said indifferently, "Do you agree or disagree?" This, while Iron Marquis was still considering, the finger of mountains and rivers flickered. He didn't dare to say, "I bet you don't have any bullets in your gun," and could only hurriedly say, "Agree, agree. Hand over your soul source." "Friend, this is a bit too much, hoo. The light of the finger of mountains and rivers shone brightly, causing Iron Marquis but to feel a chill, and he hurriedly said, "Hand it over." As a result, the main culprit of the third floor of hell surrendered without even half a chapter, not giving any chance to expand the plot. Wait here. After obtaining the soul source, Jun Changshao said indifferently, I'll go to the next floor to take a look. With that, he walked towards the teleportation circle. Seeing this, Iron Marquis exclaimed in his heart, could it be that this guy came down from the first and second floor? Because the cooldown of the Finger of Mountains and Rivers had been used up, it recovered after entering the next level of hell. Even if there is a cooldown, it might not be effective. Jun Changshao thought. Facing Iron Marquis, it was obvious that he was powerless. The boss of the fourth floor was definitely stronger. However, what surprised Jun Changshao was when he entered the new fourth floor of hell and used the shrinking great art to deal with the martial artists inside, the main culprit who walked out was actually an old man in a white robe. He held a pen in his hand and said, "Little friend, you also like to play with words?" The voice was amiable and without any hostility. Jun Changshao could tell from the look in his eyes that even though the other party was strong, he was definitely not an evil person. Thus, he sneered in his heart, it seems like the Universal Fortress uses its own laws to convict others. He was right. When the stronghold tried and imprisoned prisoners, it always followed its own laws. Even if you casually spit in the universe, you could be convicted. If they had been authorized by the upper realm to judge the crimes of the martial artists, it would have been fine. However, they had not produced any valid evidence. This was a bit like treating themselves as the police who maintained the peace of the universe. A little. What about poems and songs? It's all right. The white-haired elder smiled and said, "Little friend, come down from above. Do you want to compete with this old man?" "No." Jun Changshao shook his head and denied, "I'm here to look for someone." Such a well-mannered old man would definitely not follow his previous domineering ways. Not to mention, other than wanting to find the pleasure of dominating the prison, he really wanted to find the 9 great martial emperors. Unfortunately, he could not find them even after searching several levels of hell. The system said, if we follow the traditional plot, the people or things you need will usually appear in a large pile on the surface of the water before they appear at the end. Aren't you afraid of being banned? Fine, I've been slapped in the face so many times. I don't want to do it anymore. Is the person you're looking for in the 4th level? No. If that's the case, little friend, I'm afraid you'll have to go to the 5th level. Thus, you can only pass if you defeat this old man. The white-haired elder had a smile on his face from beginning to end, revealing the demeanor of a master. Senior. Jun Changshao said helplessly, do we have to go to the extent of using weapons? In a short exchange, he was already sure that this white-haired elder was not the kind of old man who would suddenly become evil. Thus, he hoped to use his mouth to let him pass. No, no, no. The white-haired elder said, I, Nebula Kid, rarely use weapons in my life. If we have to fight to the end. Saying this, he raised his iron pen and said, I will use this. Jun Changshao's mouth slightly twitched. The old man's pen was similar to his own mountains and rivers, but each hair was similar to iron. Could it be that he relied on poking when fighting? Shwa! At this time, something flew over. Jun Changshao immediately became alert, but when he took a closer look, he found that it was a very large piece of paper that was suspended in front of him. Since little friend also has a pen and is proficient in poetry, let's use pen and ink to determine the winner. Nebula Kid asked, what do you think? This way of fighting was very interesting. However, Jun Changshao said, pen and ink are not competing with spiritual power and strength. How can we determine the winner? Nebula Kid said, everyone's words have a different charm. They all have a special soul. As long as we compare them, we can naturally determine the winner. Just writing? Jun Changshao said. Of course. Nebula Kid laughed, if little friend has a good understanding of your own poetry, you can also write it. Words and poetry are the same. They all have an inner soul. Good. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, then let's use pen instead of martial arts. Please. You are the leader. You first. Nebula Kid did not decline modestly. He gently raised the pen in his hand. The power that was not martial arts poured into the tip of the pen from his skinny hand. Then, he jumped up and wrote on the paper. Every stroke, every drawing. They all exuded an extraordinary aura. This is a true master. Jun Changshao was deeply shocked from the perspective of a bystander. Even from the other party's movements, he felt that although it was not martial arts, it had the same profound meaning. Schwa! Schwa! Nebula Kid wrote very elegantly. Until it landed on the original position, the tip of the pen in his hand gradually dimmed. Behind him, there were 2 lines of words, holding the pen to draw floating dust, a little color to draw the universe. Senior is a genius. Although Jun Changshao was not an elegant person, and although he did not know much about poetry, from these 2 lines, he could see a kind of power that could swallow mountains and rivers. Especially the writing was quite good. It could be framed and collected. Little friend. Nebula Kid said, please. I'll show you my incompetence. Jun Changshao tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and flew into the air. His pointer of rivers and mountains shone brightly as he began to write on a piece of paper. Although Go Sheng's character was a bit despicable, he was quite talented in writing. Especially when he flew up, his whole body emerged with a power that came from the east. The great Jun Changshao of China, he inherited the fine tradition of China. Poet immortal Li Bai, poet sage Du Fu, and poet ghostly Yi's soul possessed him at this moment. He was not fighting alone. He was not alone. Schwa! Schwa! His pen was like thunder and wind. Everything was in sync. Nebula Kid frowned at first. Then, his expression became slightly sluggish. Finally, he became ecstatic. Ta! After a while, Jun Changshao floated down. If not for the fact that he had no hair, he would definitely shake his head in front of the camera. As for the paper behind him, it wrote 10,000 poems. Jiu Qianshang. How many times have I looked at the marquee? The system roared, after all this time, you are still copying the ancient poems of your ancestors. Me. Jun Changshao proudly stood with his hands behind his back and said, are you proud now? Chapter 1245. Jun Changshao's handwriting was good, but his poems and songs were lacking. However, this did not prevent him from competing with Nebula Kid. When he jumped up and waved his ink, various ancient poems appeared in his mind. Dog Leftover really wasn't fighting alone. Holding the brush to draw dust, painting the universe with a little color. Thousands of poems, Jiu Qianshang, how many times did I look at the king? The first sentence fully expressed Nebula Kid's power, and even placed himself at the peak, drawing all living things with his brush, controlling the universe with his ink. Jun Changshao chose the section from the northern song poet Zhu Duanru's Partridge Sky, Shidu, which showed a kind of wild unruliness. Wonderful! Wonderful! After Nebula Kid carefully tasted it, he said shamefully, my realm is not as high as yours. Poems could describe a person's state of mind. For example, the 2 sections he wrote, he saw himself as a king, reaching the peak and looking down on the heroes. On the other hand, Jun Changshao's words represented a free and easy detachment, even ignoring the power of the mortal world, and only following his heart. I am still obsessed with the mortal world, but you have already transcended it. I am ashamed of my state of mind. Nebula Kid moved his body, waved his hand and said, please. Jun Changshao thought, I won just like that. He casually copied a poem from an ancestor and made the main culprit of the 4th level of hell admit defeat. It was a bit surprising. You let me win. Jun Changshao cupped his hands elegantly, and then walked towards the teleportation circle to the 5th level of hell. It would be great if the later bosses were fighting with words instead of fighting with force. You think too much. The system said, there are only a few strong people who enter the Tao through words. When Jun Changshao arrived in front of the teleportation circle, Nebula Kid was still standing in the same place, carefully evaluating every word written on the paper, every stroke. Sometimes he was lost in thought, sometimes he seemed to be enlightened. The fifth level of hell. Jun Changshao walked out of the flickering teleportation circle. It was no different from the previous few times. There were already a large number of prisoners coming to welcome him. Although there were some of them who were not high level, their overall strength was obviously stronger than the previous levels. Brat! At the back of the prisoners, a middle-aged man with his upper body exposed was lying on the ground. He grinned and said, "Did you come down to compete with me in drinking?" There were many empty wine jars beside him, and his face was red. It was obvious that he had drunk a lot, and even his mouth was slurring when he spoke. Furthermore, Jun Changshao noticed that the prisoners around him were reeking of alcohol. Some of them were swaying unsteadily, so he muttered in his heart, "How many dishes did they have to drink to this extent?" "You have two choices." The middle-aged man burped and stretched out 3 fingers. "Either you drink with me, or you kneel down and call me master." Jun Changshao asked, "How do we compete?" Shwa! 40 jars of unopened wine flew over and lined up neatly. The middle-aged man flew over and laid down on top of it. He supported his head with one hand and said with a smile, "You and I will drink half each. Whoever can still stand after drinking will be the winner." Jun Changshao muttered in his heart, "This is using wine as a substitute for martial arts. If I knew this would happen, I would have brought Anyo here." Go Sheng probably didn't know that in the sect of all times, Li Qingyang and the others were searching for Yi Xingqian because the latter had drunk a few bowls of drunken dreams in one go. Ah! The Purple King's angry roar could be heard from the Spirit Beast Peak. Then, he saw the unconscious Pei Anyo being thrown down. "What are the benefits of winning?" Jun Changshao asked. The middle-aged man said, "Since you dare to come from the 4th level of hell to the 5th level of hell, it means that you are very confident in your strength. If you win against me, I will recognize you as the boss." Jun Changshao's eyes lit up. First, it was a substitute for martial arts. Now, it was using wine as a substitute for martial arts. There was no need to fight at all. This way, he could preserve his spirit energy and deal with the subsequent prison boss. Of course. The middle-aged man yawned and pointed at the prisoner who was curled up in the darkness and said, "If you lose, you will be like him and become my personal punching bag." Jun Changshao's spiritual senses spread over and found that the person's strength was alright, but his face was covered in bruises. It seemed like he had been bullied frequently. "Alright." Go Xing said, "Let's compete in wine." Jun Changshao might not be an expert when it came to drinking, but if he used his spirit energy to force the alcohol out of his body, he would be able to drink 1,000 cups without getting drunk. In the center of the 5th level of hell, there was a large round table. Not only were there dozens of jars of wine on it, but there was also plenty of wine below. Jun Changshao and the middle-aged man sat at the east and west respectively, with a few meters between them. Thousands of prisoners surrounded them, obviously intending to be a spectator. "I say," Jun Changshao was speechless, "at least give me a plate of peanuts." The middle-aged man said, "A true expert in the art of wine doesn't need food to go with wine." Jun Changshao was convinced. "Kid." The middle-aged man pushed a jar of wine over and said, "I allow you to force the wine out of your body. If you can still stand up after drinking it, then it's your win." Jun Changshao thought to himself, "This wine is definitely not simple. Young friend." Suddenly, a voice transmission sounded in his ears, "The wine in front of you is called drunken immortal wine. Once it enters your body, it can't be forced out." Jun Changshao was expressionless, but in fact, he already knew that the person who spoke was the pitiful worm curled up in the dark. Can't be forced out? Go Xing thought to himself, no wonder he's so confident. Paw! As he spoke, he opened the mud seal. A rich wine aroma immediately spread. Jun Changshao took a sniff and praised, "Good wine." "Ha ha ha." The middle-aged man laughed and said, "Looks like you're a kindred spirit." I'll drink first. Jun Changshao stood up first, grabbed the wine with one hand, and raised it high. The wine immediately flowed out like a waterfall. The middle-aged man was a little stunned. The prisoners in the distance were also dumbfounded. Even immortals couldn't withstand the wine, but he raised it and drank it directly. Wasn't he afraid of getting drunk and then lying on the ground like mud? He's still too young. If he knew how strong boss drunken immortal wine is, he definitely wouldn't drink it so recklessly. No, I can't take it anymore after smelling this wine aroma. The main culprit of the 5th floor of hell loved to drink, and he liked to drink with others. Therefore, over time, the other prisoners all became alcoholics. Gulp, gulp. Jun Changshao was still drinking. After the wine entered his body, it immediately spread, and then merged into his blood and meridians, and attacked his mind and sea of consciousness. Paw! The middle-aged man was unwilling to be left behind. He slapped the mud seal of the wine jar next to him, and then raised it and drank. Gulp, gulp. Gulp, gulp. The two of them were standing, with one foot on the chair, and drinking crazily. Paw! Jun Changshao finished a jar of wine first, skillfully opened another jar, and raised it again to drink. The prisoners opened their mouths. After drinking a jar of drunken immortal wine, his expression didn't change. This guy's alcohol tolerance was really good. Paw! Paw! Jun Changshao drank jar after jar of drunken immortal wine. The whole process didn't stop at all, and he didn't even burp. Bang! After a while, Goshen smashed the empty jar on the table, wiped the wine stains on the corner of his mouth, and smiled. I'm done. In front and behind him, 19 empty jars were casually arranged. The middle-aged man put down the half-empty jar, and his expression was a little interesting. After all, that guy drank 20 jars, and he only drank 10. Just from the speed alone, it was obvious that he was at a disadvantage. Kid. He grinned. Just drinking isn't enough, you have to be able to stand. No problem. Jun Changshao hugged his hands together. From his expression and tone, it was impossible to tell that he drank. The middle-aged man couldn't help but mutter in his heart, could it be, he can dissolve the drunken immortal wine that entered his body? Chapter 1246. Drunken immortal wine meant that even the immortals in the heavens would get drunk after drinking it. However, Jun Changshao drank 20 jars in a row and was completely fine. Instead, he stood there calmly with his hands crossed. The alcohol demon muttered in his heart. Could it be that the wine that entered his stomach was dissolved? Impossible. He immediately denied it and said, this wine has a special refining method. As long as it enters the body, it will never be dissolved. If that was the case, he had really met an expert in the way of wine. The alcohol demon would never have dreamed that there were two infant bodies in Jun Changshao's dantian. He would never have thought that all the wine that entered his stomach would be refined by the two of them. Especially Huoling. When the wine crazily attacked his father's sea of consciousness and thoughts, he suddenly opened his eyes from his sleep and turned into a ray of light that blocked the only path. He destroyed one that came and destroyed a bunch that came. As an existence that could purify evil thoughts, it was naturally easy for him to purify the wine. Xia Ling's performance was also not bad. He guarded another path and first covered the wine before refining it. He would occasionally take a sip or two. When all the wine that entered his body was refined and the little fellow returned to his dantian, he used the wine to point at Huoling's nose and scold him, venting his grievances. In the end, he was beaten up. Jun Changshao did not care about the two little fellows messing around in his body. Instead, he looked at the alcohol demon without changing his expression. Gudu. After a while, the other party also drank the rest of the wine. Although his face was even redder, he still stood there confidently. It could be seen that he really drank with his strength. The two stood there for half an hour. Both of them were as steady as Mount Tai. Kid. The alcohol demon smiled and said, This father has been drinking for thousands of years, and this is the first time I have met an opponent that is on par with me. How about we drink a few more jars? No problem, Jun Changshao said. As a native of Shandong, he would never lower his head when it came to wine. The alcohol demon raised his hand and prepared to take out the Qingfeng wine. Jun Changshao said first, this time, drink my wine. Oh? The alcohol demon said, you have wine? As someone who likes to drink, how could I not have wine? Jun Changshao said. Take it out. Wine demon said straightforwardly. It was rare for him to meet someone who shared the same interests as him. It made him feel as if 1,000 cups of wine were not enough when drinking with a bosom friend. Shwa! Jun Changshao waved his hand and several jars of fine wine were placed on the table. This was the drunken dream that Lan Kong had meticulously refined. As the master of a sect, he would sometimes need to entertain guests, so he would store it in his spatial ring in advance. The demon of wine waved his hand and took a jar. He removed the seal on the wine and sniffed it with his nose. He immediately praised, good wine, good wine. The aroma of wine permeated the entire prison. All of the prisoners who were fond of alcohol raised their noses and sniffed. The alcohol worms in their stomachs immediately began to churn violently. Just from the taste alone, I'm afraid it's not inferior to the drunken immortal wine. If only I could have a sip. They really wanted to rush over, but because they were afraid of the alcohol demon, they could only stand there and drool. They secretly prayed that their boss would leave some for them to taste. Jun Changshao said, this wine is called Drunken Dream. It was brewed by a master brewer of the falling star continent using the essence of the universe, the sun, and the moon. Just a small sip will increase the speed of martial arts absorption. Oh? The demon of wine's eyes were filled with surprise. Before he was imprisoned, he had traveled to countless mortal planes and drunk thousands of fine wines. This was the first time he had heard that fine wine used to liven things up could help martial artists improve their cultivation speed. Of course. Jun Changshao said, the wine is also very strong. You'd better drink with caution, lest you get drunk and lose consciousness. Ha ha ha. The demon of wine laughed and said, I started drinking when I was 20 years old. I've drunk all the fine wines in the mortal universe, and I've never gotten drunk and lost consciousness. Shwa! Speaking of this, he grabbed the wine with one hand and lifted the drunken dream up. He began to drink in the same way as before. Man! Jun Changshao admired him in his heart. When the sect held a celebration party, people would get drunk and lose consciousness. However, they would just use bowls as a substitute. No one dared to brag directly to the jar because the wine was too strong. Gulp! Gulp! The demon of wine drank to his heart's content. The more he drank, the better he felt. After he finished the jar, he placed one hand on the table and said, I thought the drunken immortal wine was the best wine I've ever drunk. Now it seems that there's always someone better than me. Paw! Jun Changshao also slapped the mud seal and lifted the drunken dream up to drink. This was the first time he drank in the same way as before. Anyway, he had the fire spirit in his body to help him refine the wine. Not to mention drinking a jar, he could even drink an ocean's worth of wine without a problem. Shwa! The demon of wine was not satisfied after drinking one jar. He took the second jar. Just as he was about to lift it up, a flood of wine energy burst out from his body and rushed to his sea of consciousness. Not good, he was shocked and was about to set up a defense line. However, there was no time. He instantly lost consciousness and fell to the ground like a pile of mud. The drunken dream was too strong. He would not be able to withstand drinking the whole jar in one go. Oh my God! Boss drank until he passed out. All the prisoners stared with their eyes wide open. The demon of wine's strongest battle record was fighting all the prisoners on the 5th floor of hell alone. In the end, he drank them all until they passed out. He then sat on the table and sang about how lonely it was to be invincible. Now, after drinking just one jar of the drunken dream, he directly passed out. How strong was the alcohol? Gulp, gulp. Jun Changshao quickly finished the jar of wine. Then, he looked at the demon of wine and shook his head. That's it? After waiting for more than 10 minutes, he turned around and said, "Tell me loudly who won." All the prisoners were silent. Although they wanted to deny it, the truth was that their boss lost, and he lost in a very embarrassing way. Jun Changshao got the answer he wanted from their eyes. Then, he turned to the camera and said seriously, "Drinking alcohol is harmful to your health. Please do not drink too much. For everyone's safety, don't drink and drive." 4 hours later, the demon of wine woke up from his sleep. He held his head that was in pain and said, I drank until I blacked out. So, a voice sounded in his ear. "From now on, I am the boss of the 5th floor of hell." The demon of wine raised his head and found that the kid was standing there with a smile on his face. Next to him was an empty jar of drunken dream. He was surprised. "You are not drunk?" "Everyone can testify," Jun Changshao said. The demon of wine was silent. In fact, it didn't matter if the prisoners testified or not. After all, he was drunk. This was an unchangeable fact. Schwa! He struggled to stand up and said loudly, "Since you won, you are naturally the boss. I, the demon of wine, accept my defeat." Jun Changshao was not surprised. A person who was bold and unrestrained when drinking would not have a bad temperament. Come. The demon of wine waved his hand and said, "Come and greet the new boss." Schwa! 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 A group of drunkard prisoners gathered and bowed respectfully to Jun Changshao. However, their eyes never left the unopened jars of drunken dream. "Since you have recognized me as your boss, I will naturally not treat you badly. Take this wine and drink it." If Lan Kong knew that the drunken dream that he carefully brewed was given away by the patriarch, he would definitely cry in the toilet. "Boss." The demon of wine gave a thumbs up and said, "I have been drinking for so many years, but this is the first time I have met an expert like you." Jun Changshao thought of a plan and said, "There is someone who can drink more than me." "Oh?" The demon of wine was surprised. "Who?" Jun Changshao said with a serious expression, "In the Falling Star continent where I live, there is a disciple of the sect of all times called Yixingchen. He is known as the Supreme of Wine Dao. I have challenged him 100 times and lost 100 times. The system complained. The host is starting to persecute Pei Anu again." Chapter 1247. The alcoholic demon's personality was very much to Jun Changshao's liking, and he was also very strong in martial arts, so he immediately had the intention to recruit him. How to recruit him? This was a big problem. Dog Leftover came up with a plan. He purposely portrayed Yixingchen as a Wine Dao sovereign, and then made him want to meet him. Why not Li Qingyang or Xiao Ziji? One had to know that any random disciple, even female disciples like Lu Wancher and Yao Menjing, were much better at drinking than Anyo. If one had to explain, it might be the patriarch's love for his disciple. Moreover, Yixingchen's exclusive divine weapon evolved into a wine jar. In terms of external settings, it was quite suitable for the title of Supreme Wine Master. The system said, the host likes to persecute Yixingchen. Even now, the people of the Soul Race continent are still scolding him when they eat. Supreme Wine Master. The alcoholic demon's eyes lit up. He could drink more than he could drink, which made him very tempted. Falling Star Continent. Yixingchen. The alcoholic demon thought to himself, if I can get out of prison one day, I will definitely ask you for a drink. If Anyo, who had just been carried back to his room by Li Qingyang and the others, knew that he had been given the title of Supreme Wine Master by the Patriarch, he would definitely stand up and drink another bowl of drunken dream. Jun Changshao grasped the alcoholic demon's heart, but he stopped before going too far. Then, he simply asked and went to the teleportation array. Boss, are you going to the 6th level of hell? Yes. It's better not to go. The alcoholic demon said seriously, the main criminal imprisoned there is not to be trifled with. Is that so? Jun Changshao smiled and said, then I'm even more interested. The corner of the alcoholic demon's mouth twitched. He had persuaded him. If he really wanted to go, he couldn't forcefully stop him. Jun Changshao walked towards the teleportation array. Just as he was about to enter, a voice sounded in his ears, young friend, wait. The one who spoke was the poor guy who was curled up in the corner. He mustered up his courage to stand up and walk over. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at the alcoholic demon. Hey! How dare you stand up without my permission? The alcoholic demon was about to roll up his sleeves and teach the other party a lesson when he was stopped by Jun Changshao. What's the matter? The man walked over, paused for a moment, and asked, you're from the Falling Star continent? Not bad. Are you looking for the 9 Thearchs? Jun Changshao's question to the wine demon had been heard clearly even though he was hiding in the distance. You know him? Go Sheng asked hurriedly. From the 1st layer to the 5th layer of hell, although the author had neglected to write much, he had still inquired and made inquiries. However, in the end, there was no news of the 9 great martial emperors. Who? Suddenly, a wave of air gushed out from the man's body, blowing away his disheveled hair and revealing a slightly dignified face. He said, I am one of the 9 emperors you are looking for. Upon hearing this, Jun Changshao's jaw dropped. This pitiful guy who had been bullied in the 5th layer of hell was one of the 9 great martial emperors he was looking for? Don't talk nonsense. Shouldn't the 9 great martial emperors, who controlled the Falling Star continent, be awe-inspiring without being angry? When Jun Changshao had transmigrated and learned that there were 9 great martial emperors in this plane, he had thought that experts of this level would definitely be more impressive than emperors. He had even dreamed of drinking wine and discussing the world situation together. If the pitiful guy standing in front of him was really one of the 9 great martial emperors he was looking for, it was a huge contrast. The system said, the 9 great martial emperors are very strong in the Falling Star continent, but they are very common in the mortal universe. Especially when they are imprisoned in the 9 layers of hell and are in such a miserable state, it seems normal. That's true. Jun Changshao felt relieved. The 9 great martial emperors were regarded as the most powerful kings in the Falling Star continent, and their image would subconsciously be associated with tall and mighty. However, in the entire mortal universe, they were very common, especially the main criminals imprisoned in the 9 layers of hell. Not only were they powerful, but they also had their own abilities. It was not rare for them to be imprisoned and tortured and lose their dignity as kings. The 9 great martial emperors? The wine demon said disdainfully, so, they are quite famous. This pitiful guy who couldn't outdrink him and couldn't outfight him had never looked at him in the eye. That person clenched his fists, and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. However, after being tortured for thousands of years, he had learned to endure and pretended not to hear the other parties mocking. Which one of the 9 great martial emperors are you? Jun Changshao asked. That person tidied up his messy hair and clothes and said in a formal tone, Du Yinqing, Spirit Emperor. These few simple words allowed Jun Changshao to capture the remaining aura of a king, and he couldn't help but believe it. He said, do you have proof? Swoosh! Du Yinqing opened his palm. A gold-rimmed token with the words Spirit Emperor engraved on it appeared, and he said, this is my token. If Go Sheng were a senior of a top sect in the continent at this time, he would definitely salute respectfully when he saw the token, because seeing the token of the 9 great martial emperors was like seeing the real person. Not bad. The system said, this token is produced in the Falling Star continent. You can tell. Jun Changshao inwardly muttered in surprise. The system said proudly, don't think that the host is the only one who is constantly getting stronger. This system is also constantly leveling up. Since the other party took out his identity token, Jun Changshao was already 80% convinced, so he went forward and shook hands, saying, Boss, I've wronged you. Go Sheng liked to daydream. For example, if he met the 9 great martial emperors one day, would he be able to call them brothers and stand side by side with them? Now that it really happened, the result was completely different from what he imagined, because not only did the other party not have a noble temperament, but he was more pitiful than a beggar. Sigh. Du Yinqing sighed. He didn't say anything, because if he said anything more, he would cry. Ha ha ha. The drunkard demon put a hand on his shoulder and grinned. So you know the boss. We've known each other for a long time. From today onwards, we'll call each other brothers. People with bold and unrestrained personalities like to forget grudges with a smile. Du Yinqing broke down. You fucking tortured me for thousands of years, and you still have the face to call each other brothers? Jun Changshao didn't rush to enter the 6th level of hell. Instead, he talked to Du Yinqing alone and asked, Boss, which level of hell are the other martial emperors locked in? After thousands of years of torture, the spirit emperor had lost his former sharpness, like a weathered old man who drank a mouthful of wine, saying, We were brought to the starry fortress and separated. Jun Changshao asked, What crime did you commit? Du Yinqing drank a big mouthful of wine, and the past instantly appeared in his mind. Then, he shook his head bitterly and said, Let's not talk about the past. How can we not talk about it? I'm very curious about what crime you committed to be locked in the 9th level of hell by the starry fortress. Plop. Just as he was about to continue asking, Du Yinqing collapsed. From the expression on his face, it was obvious that he was drunk to the point of losing consciousness. Jun Changshao was speechless and disdainful. He said, I thought the 9 great martial emperors were very strong, but I didn't expect them to be so weak. Pft. Pft. Chapter 1248. Since the end of the ancient era, the falling star continent only had 10 martial emperors due to the restrictions of heaven and earth. After Yixingchen died, the remaining 9 were regarded as supreme beings. If the top experts of a plane appeared in front of the protagonist, they would definitely have their own background music. They would definitely have a grand aura. Just a close-up would be enough to fill half a chapter. Jun Changshao had also fantasized about meeting the 9 martial emperors. He had to bring out the patriarch's temperament to the extreme and not be inferior to them. In fact, when he met Du Yinqing, the spirit emperor, he realized that the situation was not what he had imagined. Du Yinqing's hair was disheveled and his face was swollen. He was even worse than a beggar. The great expert in his imagination was actually so miserable. The huge contrast made Gosheng speechless. Forget it, forget it. I'd better hurry down and find the others. However, with this reference, Jun Changshao guessed that the other 8 martial emperors would not be so miserable, right? When he sobers up, you must serve him well. Before entering the array, Gosheng did not forget to remind them. After all, they were all from the falling star continent. They had to take care of each other. Boss, don't worry. The alcoholic demon said, From now on, this guy is my brother. Swish. Jun Changshao stepped into the array and disappeared. The alcoholic demon thought to himself, Boss looks good. I'm afraid he will have to fight with that guy in the 6th level of hell. Swish. In the dark area, lights suddenly flashed, and the words 6th level of hell gradually appeared. Jun Changshao walked out of the teleportation array and said to himself, I'm already at the 6th level. Time flies. Swish. At this moment, a stream of light appeared from above and shone on a fixed area, showing a small stone platform. The stone platform seemed to be made of some special ore. After the light effect appeared, a slender figure with his back facing Jun Changshao started to pose. Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. He definitely could not pose in such a shameful way. Paw! There was a snap of fingers. Although not half of the people died, there were suddenly a few more streams of light shining on the stone platform from different directions. It was like a stage lighting effect. Is this a concert? Or should I sing and dance? Jun Changshao muttered. The system completely collapsed. First, he used the brush to replace martial arts. Then, he used wine to replace martial arts. This time, he was going to use a song to replace martial arts. Was it because I had said with certainty that this kind of special battle was rare, so he was slapping himself in the face? I really can't continue assisting the host. Interesting. Jun Changxiao's lips curled into a smile. Every time they entered a new hell, the strength of the prisoners would generally increase. He really didn't have the confidence to fight them head-on. If it were any other way, he would more or less have some confidence. Furthermore, this kind of stage lighting meant that the other party was proficient in singing and dancing. What a coincidence! I don't dare to say that I'm very good at dancing, but when it comes to singing, when have I, Jun Changxiao, ever lost to anyone? The system complained, because once the host opens his mouth, the opponent will bleed to death from all 7 orifices. Reality. It was too damn realistic. Schwa! The figure posing on the stone platform stretched out a slender arm. Pa pa pa! The streams of light in the prison were all activated, instantly dispersing the darkness. The entire area was suddenly dyed with 7 colors. It was simply a visual feast. Jun Changxiao's titanium dog eyes were suddenly blinded by the light, so he instinctively raised his hand to block it. When he got used to it, he was completely dumbfounded. In his field of vision, thousands of prisoners had unknowingly appeared. They were standing under the stone platform in several square formations, maintaining the same back-facing posture as the figure on the stage. Fuck! Jun Changxiao secretly said, a bunch of slaves. The system took the opportunity to complain, every day, bringing the disciples to do morning exercises, isn't the host also a lot of slaves? Schwa! At this moment, the figure standing on the stage turned around in an extremely natural and unrestrained manner. The 2 words main culprit were written on his clothes. His smooth black hair naturally fell down, half covering his white sharp chin face. Is this a man or a woman? For the first time, Jun Changxiao had doubts about a person's gender. Because from the height, it seemed to be a man, but from the white skin and thin arms and legs, it seemed to be a woman. Schwa! At this moment, the main culprit, who was neither a man nor a woman, opened his folding fan and waved it lightly. His head was tilted to the side, showing off his outstanding points to the extreme. Fuck! Jun Changxiao's expression suddenly became gloomy. He could understand that the other party was neither a man nor a woman. After all, this was given by his parents, and he had no right to choose. However, on the unfolded fan was actually written the most handsome man in the mortal world. Ha ha ha. The system laughed loudly. It had personally experienced the narcissism of the host. Today, it suddenly encountered an even more narcissistic person who even labeled himself as the most handsome man in the mortal world. It could be considered as meeting its match. Schwa! Schwa! The prisoners below the stage turned around. All of them had the same words on their chest, and when combined, they were all the most handsome man in the mortal world. Kid! The main culprit on the stage gently waved his folding fan, then turned his face, smiling more beautifully than a woman, and said, "You came down from above just to watch my performance?" Jun Changxiao clenched his fists, his eyes flashing with anger. Not only did this guy look feminine, even his voice was feminine. Gou Xing suddenly couldn't control his temper. He really wanted to go over and press him on the floor, rubbing his face with all his strength. Especially. The words on the folding fan were also very eye-catching. In fact, in terms of appearance, Jun Changxiao really couldn't compare with this main culprit. Even if Yuan Gongzi was here, he would still be much weaker. It wasn't that Gou Sheng was ugly. On the contrary, he was very handsome, and he had a somewhat despicable and bad temperament. Yuan Gongzi was even more handsome. Otherwise, when they first met in Maple Valley, Jun Changxiao wouldn't have left behind a classic line, "Those who are more handsome than me are all women disguised as men." Of course. There were many types of handsome men. There were handsome men, sunny men, and temperament men. Gou Sheng and Yuan Gongzi belonged to this type, and there were even many combinations. Even the Star Navigation King, who had died a long time ago but still existed in terms of measurement units, was a little too narcissistic, but at least people could tell the gender at a glance. As for the main culprit on the stage, he could only say that he was very good-looking and very beautiful. In terms of temperament, he only lacked the masculinity that a man should have. Jun Changshao didn't say that he was a woman disguised as a man, because he was almost disguised as a woman. If it weren't for the obvious Adam's apple and the flat land, people would have mistaken him for a woman at first glance. In addition to being fair and beautiful, he didn't have the slightest temperament that a man should have. He even spoke in a feminine way, and he actually claimed to be the most handsome man in the world. Why was his face so big? Why wasn't he Li Tianshang? Huff, huff. Anger instantly surged in his heart, and Jun Changshao's body surged with powerful psionic energy. This guy. I must beat him up today, the kind that will kill him. Ta! Jun Changshao stepped out. Under the ripples of psionic energy, his right fist quickly armed, and his strength reached the peak in an instant. He shouted angrily, "Don't insult the word handsome." Chapter 1249. Jun Changshao was angry. Because the main culprit of the 6th level was humiliating the word handsome. As the leader of the handsome generation, humiliating it was the same as humiliating himself. Torture. He had to torture it. Jun Changshao hadn't released his emotions for a long time, which surprised the system. It couldn't help but sigh. A narcissistic person meets an even more narcissistic person. It's destined to be a fierce battle. The alcoholic demon had already guessed this result. Boom! Suddenly, a deafening explosion rang out. Jun Changshao, who had been sent flying, was sent flying back. Then, he madly retreated dozens of steps before he could stabilize his body. Below the stone platform, there were several prisoners in different formations. At this moment, they had already gathered together. The prisoners at the back put their palms on the backs of their comrades in front of them and poured spiritual energy into them. The prisoners at the front worked together to form a strong defensive barrier. The defense is very strong, the system said. Jun Changshao's expression turned ugly. He forcibly suppressed the blood boiling from the backlash. There weren't many prisoners in the 6th level of hell, only about 2,000 or 3,000. However, their overall strength was much higher than that of the 1st level of hell, especially the row in front of the barrier. There were at least 30 wusheng at the consummate level. This kind of high-level formation was extremely rare in the Falling Star continent and even the dimensional battlefield. Now that it appeared in the Starry Sky Fortress prison, it gave people the feeling that wusheng was everywhere and wuhuang was as common as dogs. Of course, there were fewer lower-level void-piercing realm cultivators. Since Jun Changshao entered the prison, he had fought his way to the 6th level. Only the main culprit and the Spirit Emperor had this level of cultivation. On the other hand, there were many void-piercing realm cultivators in the fortress. The general in charge of opening the gate was as good as the handsome man. It was normal. There were so many prisoners in the 9th level of hell. If the fortress didn't have absolute strength to suppress them, they would have escaped from the prison long ago. They wouldn't have been able to stand in the starry sky for so many years. They even allowed convicted martial artists to bring their treasures and equipment into the prison. As for the prisoners working together, not to mention that each level of hell only allowed people to go down and not go up, even if they worked together, the system's first theft ended in failure. This showed how strong the prison's defense system was. Kid. A middle-aged man said coldly, "If you want to see our young master's performance, you should stay where you are." Ugly freak, you dare to approach my young master? Who gave you the face? A martial artist said coldly. Yeah. My young master is peerless in his generation and is admired by tens of thousands of people. He is not someone that any trash can casually approach and blaspheme. This kind of person doesn't deserve to see our young master's performance. The crowd of cultivators clamored, their eyes filled with hatred and anger towards Jun Changshao. Especially when she kept saying, "My young master." Her tone and gaze were not like that of a master and servant, but more like that of a fan supporting an idol. Shoo! The main culprit made a shushing gesture. The prisoners immediately stopped their discussion, and their eyes were filled with strong worship. Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. The prisoners of the 6th floor of hell were different from the other prisoners. They were like a group of fans who were so addicted that they could not extricate themselves. Furthermore, from the fact that he had instantly formed a powerful defensive barrier to stop his attack, it was obvious that he had received professional training. "Brat!" The main culprit said, "Not only are you ugly, but you also have a bad temper." Fuck! Jun Changshao's eyes flickered with even more fury. To be called ugly by a sissy who was protected by thousands of brainless prisoners, this was simply a great humiliation. Shwa! Jun Changshao rushed over again and took out the sky-dominating spear. All kinds of spiritual energy gathered at the tip of the spear, forming a power that shook the space. Huff! Huff! Monstrous spiritual energy rushed over and wrapped around the tip of the spear, as if it had turned into an angry dragon that could shake the sky. The main culprit flicked his black hair and said softly, "Change the formation." His action and tone almost made Jun Changshao collapse on the spot. Therefore, he angrily said, "You idiot, you're disgusting me. How dare you insult my young master? Unforgivable. We must let him know the price of insulting my young master." Shwa! 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 In an instant, hundreds of prisoners below the stage changed their positions with mysterious footwork and then continued to line up with their palms on the backs of their companions in front of them, gathering their energy together. The defensive barrier in front of them was enhanced by even more power and immediately emitted dazzling light like a solid fortress. Boom! In an instant, Jun Changshao's spear that carried endless anger had already hit the barrier. Spiritual energy ripples spread out at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. Dang! 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 Jun Changshao was forced back dozens of steps and only stopped when the spear tip touched his back. Pain came from his right hand that was holding the spear. This should be a formation similar to the four corners heaven and earth formation. It gathers all the energy together. It might be a bit difficult for the host to break it. The system said. It didn't say too much because it was afraid of being slapped in the face. There was no other support system that could do what it did. Kid. The main culprit stood on the stage and pretended to be pretentious. My beloved supporter is here. You better not waste your energy. Deeply loved supporters. Hearing this, the prisoners became excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Some of them even almost screamed on the spot. When a person worshipped another person to the extreme, even if the other person's every word and action would make them fall into absolute madness and even lose their own rationality, it was usually called the terminal stage of no cure. The thousands of prisoners present had collectively fallen into madness, which was one of the biggest symptoms of the terminal stage of no cure. They're really a bunch of puppets. Jun Changshao held the Sky Tyrant spear tightly and was immediately enveloped in flames. He rushed over and slammed into the defensive barrier that the prisoners had set up together. Boom! There was a huge explosion, and the surrounding temperature became extremely hot along with the eruption of flames. When the flames dissipated, Jun Changshao's Sky Tyrant spear was pointed at the flowing light barrier. The jade flower wrapped around the spear tip was taking big bites. "This is..." The main culprit frowned and said, "Time worm." Bang! At this moment, the seemingly indestructible barrier in front of them suddenly collapsed. Jun Changshao seemed to have used flash and rushed forward with his spear. In slow motion, one could see the scorching flames pressing down like waves and sweeping the prisoners who had fallen into madness away. Whoosh! Flames burst out like lightning. Plop! Plop! After the scorching heat wave roared, thousands of prisoners were released from their new positions and scattered around. All of them were severely burned by the flames and rolled around on the ground in pain. Ah! Screams could be heard incessantly. However, a strange scene happened. Although the prisoners who were burned by the fire spirit's power looked abnormally ferocious, their eyes gradually became clear, as if they had received some kind of relief. I understand now. The system came to a realization and said, the prisoners are being controlled by some kind of power. Whoosh whoosh. Jun Changshao ignored it because at this moment, he was leaning sideways and the tip of the Sky Tyrant spear was pointed at the center of the main culprit's eyebrows. He said coldly, how do you want to die? If he had hair that floated upwards, stepped on the wind fire wheels, and wore the heaven and earth ring armillary sash, he could really cosplay as Neza. The main culprit was unmoved and smiled. Then, he bent his knees and slowly knelt in front of Jun Changshao. He said solemnly, brother, I was wrong. Chapter 1250. Brother. I was wrong. Jun Changshao was a little dumbfounded when he heard these words. The boss of the 6th floor of hell admitted defeat just like that? Surrender just like that? This was too spineless. In Jun Changshao's opinion, the overall strength of the several thousand prisoners was very strong. They worked together to set up a spirit formation, and they even forced him to use the space-time worm. As the main culprit, they should be stronger than the wine demon. Something's wrong. Jun Changshao suddenly realized a problem. Judging from the other party's aura, he didn't seem to be very strong. Therefore, he broke down and said, don't tell me he's a fucking noob. The system replied, the power of one marshal. Jun Changshao almost fell over. This androgynous fellow only has the strength of one marshal. No wonder I was able to get close to him so easily after breaking the barrier. It turns out that he didn't have any tricks up his sleeve, but that he didn't have the ability to dodge. Fuck. The main culprit in the 6th layer of hell might not have reached the middle level of the void-piercing tier, but he shouldn't have only the power of a commander. Host, you still can't tell? The system replied, the main culprits imprisoned in the 9 layers of hell all have their own unique characteristics. It's not necessarily a simple division of strength. That's true. Not to mention, the thousands of prisoners were burned by the power of the fire's soul. The disappearance of some kind of controlling power in their bodies might be related to him. Jun Changshao came to a realization and said, this guy has a special ability to control others and make them fall into madness. Wait a minute. Where's that guy? While Jun Changshao was thinking, he realized that the main culprit kneeling in front of him had disappeared, so he hurriedly released his spirit energy to search. Boom! At this moment, the beautiful sound of a zither came from behind him. It seemed to contain some kind of penetrating power that instantly invaded his sea of consciousness. Hoo! Xiaohua and Little Xia appeared again to nullify the energy that was wreaking havoc on his mind. Jun Changshao turned around and saw a table gradually appear in the darkness. On top of it was a slightly old guqin. The missing culprit was sitting cross-legged, and his fingers, which were more delicate than a woman's, were gently plucking the strings. Buzz! The sound of the zither gathered into ripples that filled the prison. The prisoners who were originally clear-eyed suddenly became abnormally crazy again. Then, ignoring the burns on their bodies, they stood up together and formed a special formation in front of the main culprit. Brat! The androgynous person gently placed his 10 fingers on the strings of the guqin and smiled. You're quite capable to be able to break my sea fortress. The corner of his mouth overflowed with pride, completely devoid of the compromising attitude he had when he knelt down just now. Jun Changshao sneered and said, so you were faking your surrender. Qin Linran said, all's fair in war. Shwa! Jun Changshao held the Sky Tyrant spear horizontally in front of him and said, if I'm not wrong, your strength isn't that strong. You can control the prisoners with the sound of your zither. You don't have to do anything yourself to get rid of the enemy. That's right. Qin Linran pinched a string with his fingers and said with a smile, that's why this young master was classified as a 2nd-level criminal by the fortress. I'm in charge of the 6th level of hell, and I'm even more dangerous than the 3rd-level drunkard above. See? Jun Changshao said, there's even an up on it. Qin Linran didn't explain. He put his other hand on the strings and said with a smile, my performance will begin. Please listen carefully. Buzz! Buzz! The strings of the zither were plucked beautifully. In an instant, the entire sixth level of hell was like a calm water surface that was wildly fluctuating, forming layer after layer of ripples. They contained some kind of penetrating power that passed through the defensive air wall gathered in front of Jun Changshao, quickly penetrating his body and attacking in all directions. Fire spirit and evil spirit blocked the door and fought frantically, but because the power of this music was not as strong as the intoxicating wine, it was difficult to purify it in time. Father. Xiao Hua said, I can't take it anymore. Call me master. Don't call me father. Although Jun Changshao was roaring in his heart, he also realized that the zither music was too strange. If he lost control, he might turn into a fanatic, so he hurriedly activated the Tianjun soul refining technique. Dong, dong, dong. Qin Linran's 10 fingers all moved. The sound of the zither was melodious, sweet and continuous. It could be called the sound of nature. It wasn't exaggerated. This guy was really good at playing. The prisoners who were controlled again were intoxicated by the music. If it weren't for the fear of affecting their master, they would have shouted loudly. Jun Changshao's face became more and more ferocious. The two nascent souls were being purified, and with the assistance of the Tianjun soul refining technique, the zither music that controlled his mind and sea of consciousness became more and more intense. Don't wait anymore. The system said, hurry up and use your trump card. Fuck you. Suddenly, Jun Changshao looked up and cursed angrily. Then, he took out the magically modified stereo and put it on the ground with a bang. He raised the loudspeaker with his right hand. Warning! High energy ahead. Ding! The system has entered a temporary shutdown state. Qin Linran saw Jun Changshao take out two things and smiled disdainfully. His fingers moved faster on the strings. This person could still hold on for so long under his playing, which meant that he had great perseverance. As long as he completely controlled him, it was equivalent to having another valiant general. Dong! Dong, dong! Dong, dong, dong. Relieved, a hot-blooded melody came from the magically modified stereo. Because it was turned up to the maximum volume, there was also a bass effect, which immediately covered the lingering zither music. Stomp! Jun Changshao stepped on the stereo and raised the loudspeaker high up in the air. At the same time, the intense and exciting battle instantly turned into a karaoke scene. There was even a hint of lyrics at the bottom of the song. 3 laps, 2 laps, 1 lap, no laps, I'll accompany you on the long road. With courage and passion. Searching for myself and true feelings. The place where I stop is my hometown. The song, which was completely out of tune and full of emotion, was transmitted through the loudspeaker. Suddenly, it turned into an ancient ferocious beast with a green face and fangs, pouncing on the prisoners. Pft! Pft! The prisoners, who were immersed in the beautiful melody, heard Jun Changshao's song. Their internal organs seemed to have been severely damaged, and they couldn't help but spit out blood on the spot. Qin Linran's smile gradually turned from a smile to a twisted expression. As a genius obsessed with music, it was the most difficult thing for him to tolerate a tone-deaf person who could sing so passionately. Ding, ding, ding. Qin Linran forced himself to calm down. His fingers moved on the strings, and the beautiful zither music changed from a mellow melody to a torrential downpour. Whoosh, whoosh. The sound of the zither that spread out seemed to turn into soldiers who leaped on their horses and raised their swords. Then, their iron hooves shook the sky as they charged toward the group of ferocious beasts. Welcome the wind of the sun and moon. Laughing and cupping my hands in the cool breeze. Jun Changshao was still singing Lin Zixiang's I'll accompany you on the long road loudly. Because he wasn't proficient in Cantonese, the lyrics were directly replaced with a mess of strange words. It was fine if he sang out of tune, but he couldn't remember the lyrics and even used hum to cover it. This was simply a super demon. Whoosh, whoosh. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The strength of the ancient ferocious beasts gathered by the song soared until they merged with the thousands of soldiers and horses. In an instant, they were all torn to pieces, and then charged forward with indomitable will. You're good at music. Sorry, you're completely vulnerable in front of the strongest out-of-tune king. Roar! Roar, roar, roar. Jun Changxiao's out-of-tune singing formed the momentum of the roar of 10,000 beasts. It was like a raging wave that pressed down on Qin Linran. Bang! 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 In an instant, all the zither strings broke. Qin Linran was instantly swept away and then slammed into the wall. In the end, he knelt on the ground dispiritedly. Unable to suppress the injuries in his body, he vomited blood. Throw in the fire of 10,000 tribulations. How can I measure the gains and losses? Jun Changxiao was still immersed in his singing. He gathered ancient ferocious beasts and bombarded Qin Linran until he gradually ended with a low note. Qin Linran spread his legs, tilted his head, and fainted with blood flowing out of his 7 orifices. Chapter 1251. In this world, there were not only martial arts, but also many other daos. After all, there were thousands of daos. Even if one had high attainments in poetry, music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, one could still reach the peak. Qin Linran was the representative of music in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. His hands were more delicate than a woman's and he had never fought before. However, as long as he plucked the strings, he could form a demonic sound that could control other people's thoughts and make them worship him. His slogan was, "I'm in charge of playing music at the back, and the fans are in charge of fighting the enemy at the front." Qin Linran did this before he was locked up in the 9th level of hell. Every time he appeared, there would be a large number of warriors surrounding him. As long as he fought, he would retreat to the back. Qin belonged to a type of music path. This kind of ability was different from martial arts. It was indeed mysterious and could not be explained from a scientific point of view. When martial artists fought with him, they would either beat him up in close combat or stabilize their hearts to resist the music. Jun Changxiao didn't get close, nor did he try to resist the rhythm. He went to the other extreme. That was, you play the music, I sing, and everyone has fun together. Singing was also a type of music path. However, when Gosheng sang loudly, it really shocked the world and made ghosts and gods cry. It was really like the mountains had no edges and heaven and earth were united. It was 100% certain that Jun Changxiao did not understand music path. However, his singing was completely out of tune and even forgot the lyrics. It was definitely music path's greatest nemesis, its greatest bane. Whether it was playing the music or singing, there must be a system. For example, there must be a melody and a melody. Once you open your voice, it will all be messed up. You will definitely not be able to withstand it. The most typical example was when Qin Linran used his guqin to fight against Jun Changxiao's singing. At first, he was still able to maintain his composure, but in the end, under the interference of Jun Changxiao, his guqin went out of tune. If music path was divided into good and evil, there was no doubt that Gosheng's heart-wrenching out-of-tune singing was definitely the most evil of the evil sections. Qin Linran could not stand it at all. He could not stand being disturbed by the other party's singing even though he had been immersed in music path for so many years. Therefore, after singing the song, he was sent flying and fainted on the spot. Sigh. What a sin. Thousands of prisoners weren't good at music sorcery, and didn't know the deeper mysteries. Therefore, they only vomited blood and covered their ears with their hands. Jun Changxiao moistened his throat and prepared to sing an unforgettable song. Everyone shouted in unison, "Big brother, don't open your mouth. Are you all awake?" "I'm awake. I'm awake." The power of the zither music in the prisoners' bodies had long been dispelled by Jun Changxiao's demonic music. Not only had they regained their consciousness, but the song from before had also been engraved in their hearts. If this continued, everyone might really die. Jun Changxiao's wailing and howling singing really tormented his heart and soul. Ding! System restart. It had to be said that the system was more sensible. When the host spoke, it entered a temporary shutdown state. Otherwise, it might cause the program to be paralyzed and collapse. Boom! 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 Jun Changxiao strode to the unconscious Qin Linran, raised his fists, and began to bombard him. He wasn't deliberately violent. He wanted to use the "give me back my beautiful fist" to turn the other party into a man. He wanted to make him have the masculinity that he should have. A moment later, Qin Linran's face was bruised and swollen, and his head was full of bumps. His big eyes had double eyelids and small eyes had single eyelids. His high nose bridge, which seemed to have undergone plastic surgery, was sunken. His conical face was also beaten into a square face. This was very manly. The prisoners who were cowering in the distance were all trembling. They didn't feel sorry for Qin Linran. After all, they were obsessed with him just because he was controlled by the music. Now that power was gone, they couldn't help but want to go up and beat him up when they thought of their shameful support. Swoosh! Jun Changxiao waved his hand and picked up the folding fan that had fallen to the ground. He took out a pen and made an X on the word handsome, then added the word ugly from the side. Only then did he sit down in a good mood. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden mission, moving Liang Chen by voice. The reward is 10,000 contribution points. Ding! Sect contribution points. 130000/100000 points. Ding! Sect contribution points overflow. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden mission and triggering the hidden reward. You have received Divine Grade Aptitude Modification Fluid X1. Ha! Jun Changxiao said in surprise, I actually completed a hidden mission. Calculating the time, the last hidden mission was back to when he dealt with Emperor Jinwei. Moving Liang Chen by voice. Jun Changxiao said a little complacently, is this a compliment to my singing? The system was speechless. This guy not only had no self-awareness in singing, but he was also proud of it. Oh right. Jun Changxiao slapped his forehead and said, I almost forgot about the overflow of contribution points. The second floor of hell gave him a side mission against Hui Yanyao, and he would be rewarded with 20,000 contribution points. Because he was in a hurry to find the 9 emperors, he forgot about it. Let's buy a universal talisman first. Jun Changxiao used the effect of another bottle and spent 10,000 contribution points to buy the universal talisman. This thing could increase one's realm, and it would be useful in the future. What should I buy with the remaining 20,000? Jun Changxiao opened the high-level store. Although the goods inside were good, there were no items that could provide immediate combat power. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. You can continue to farm. The system encouraged. Okay. Ding! Sect contribution points, 100,001,000,000. The reason why Jun Changxiao was so easy to talk to was because he tried to farm under the other party's promotion, and in the end, he got a supreme item. However, this time, he wasn't so lucky. The goods in the high-level store were replaced. Every pill formula had its own benefits, but at the moment, it didn't seem to be able to bring any substantial help to Jun Changxiao. Fuck! Jun Changxiao said in his heart, the contribution points were wasted. I won't farm anymore in the future. System, as the host, as long as I taste the sweetness, I'm willing to spend it even if I don't encourage it. But once my face turns black and I don't get anything, I start to complain and even have the idea of never farming again. Farming in the store is the same as buying a lottery ticket. Have you ever seen someone winning the jackpot every day? Don't you buy it again and again, accumulating it until the clouds open and the moon see the moon. Jun Changshao couldn't be bothered with it. Just as he was about to retract the store, his peripheral vision swept past the last section and couldn't move away anymore. Because it said God modified, Great Sage Set. Great Sage? Great Sage equal to heaven? Shwa! Jun Changshao hurriedly clicked on the detailed introduction item, God modified, Great Sage Set Introduction, a Great Sage set created based on Journey to the West. It contains a phoenix feather purple gold crown, golden chainmail, and lotus silk cloud walking shoes. Effect: the crown is impervious to all evil, the armor is impervious to fire and water, and the shoes can travel through heaven and earth. Advantage: soul, physical body, and speed are all increased. Disadvantage: the Great Sage set is created based on the mythological system. Although it is not the original version, if the user's 3 measurements are not up to standard, they will be crushed on the spot. Special effect: Return of the Great Sage. Price: 100,000 contribution points. Level: You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.